Of locking their adopted son in a small room for hours at a time.
Tim Ferriter and his wife are accused of keeping their adopted son in a small structure in their garage for hours at a time, according to detectives.
48-year-old Tim Ferriter is charged with child neglect, aggravated child abuse, and false imprisonment. The judge acknowledged the disturbing nature of the charges, and in fact, several parents and caregivers in the jury pool said they did not feel they could be impartial. Media coverage of the case was also discussed.
This case has been referred to in the media as the boy in the box case.
Jupiter police arrested the couple back in February of 2022 on charges of aggravated child abuse and false imprisonment. Investigators say they allegedly kept their 14-year-old adopted son in a 8x8 locked deadbolt box in their garage. The teen telling police he was allowed to go to school and he was locked in the box for up to 18 hours at a time with nothing but a mattress and a plastic bucket to use the bathroom.
48-year-old Tim Ferriter is charged with child neglect, aggravated child abuse, and false imprisonment. The judge acknowledged the disturbing nature of the charges, and in fact, several parents and caregivers in the jury pool said they did not feel they could be impartial.
The young boy telling police this isn't the first time they've done that.
He says the other homes that the family has lived in also had structures in the garage where he was forced to stay. They were previously in Arizona, and in Arizona there was a structure there, he told police. And most recently, an owner that bought the home from the parents says that they had a structure inside that garage with deadbolts. He found it very creepy, he said, and told police that the realtor listed it as a bonus room, but he did feel like it was very strange. So the boy says he was put in there for up to 18 hours at a time with only a mattress and a bucket to use for the bathroom. He says he was only allowed out for school and forced to do yard work and was physically abused one time for taking chocolate from the kitchen. Now, according to police, they confirmed the boy's claims through cameras that were placed inside of the structure. But during yesterday's first appearance, the attorney for the parents argued that the teen may be suffering from some mental health issues. However, nothing has been confirmed. We're told DCF is also investigating.
He asked me to build a box, basically, and he asked me on top of that to build a ceiling for that box. He asked me to add a deadlock to the door. He asked me to reverse the locks. On my way home with my employee, something felt wrong to me, and the only reason I could come up with is that it's not an office, and this place is made to lock a person inside.
In Arizona reported the case to the Department of Child Safety. A 14-year-old runaway saying his parents were spanking him with a leather belt and a jump rope. Similar allegations to the ones he made to Jupiter police. And we've gotten pictures of the actual box room in that Jupiter garage, thanks to the contractor who built it and who suspected something was wrong. These parents, whom we are not identifying, are facing charges in Palm Beach County for aggravated child abuse. Their runaway 14-year-old son in January told investigators his adoptive parents repeatedly locked him in an 8x8 box-like room in the garage for up to 18 hours at a time and physically abused him. The boy said the physical punishments also happened a lot when the family previously lived in Arizona and that he was confined to a similar box room there. We just obtained the Pima County Sheriff's Office reports documenting 2 investigations. Pima County deputies in November 2021 were responding to a runaway child report made by the parents. When they found the boy 2 days later, the report says he was shaking and very scared. The report says the boy told them he, out of all his siblings, was the only one that gets spanked, and he gets spanked with a jump rope and a leather belt. It goes on to say his mother recently had restrained him up against the wall and began yelling at him. When deputies found the boy, they say he kept changing his story about where he'd been and who with. Deputies writing, "At this time, we knew that he was lying." Deputies say the teen also had credit cards and other items that did not belong to him. A second report 2 weeks later says the boy ran away again, his mother saying she had been keeping a close eye on him, that he'd gotten in trouble at school for misusing his laptop and refused to take medication for an unspecified condition. That incident ended when the parents found the boy at a friend's house, and they were currently dealing with parental discipline. I just emailed the parents' attorney, Nellie King. She says the Arizona Department of Child Safety concluded allegations of child abuse by the boy were unfounded. She says that finding is substantiated by sheriff's investigators who determined the boy's statements to them were untruthful. The parents claim the boy has a history of problems. They remain free on bond, while DCF has taken temporary custody of their other 3 children.
Hey everyone, good morning. How are we? Day 3. Day 3 of the trial. Adoptive parent mistreating their 14-year-old adopted son, treating him differently than he does the rest of the family, keeping him in a room off that they specifically built in the garage for him to stay in. It did have an air conditioner, however, it could only be locked and unlocked from the outside. The young man did give his testimony yesterday. It was very compelling. I want to bring up something here that this yesterday watching all this is what I kept thinking in my head. You guys remember this part of this movie? I absolutely loved this part of that movie. The movie is The Help. And this little girl was mistreated by her mama. And I guess she was the nanny, she was the housekeeper, she was everything. She gave her so much love and kindness. And yesterday I kept thinking about this. I kept thinking about while that little boy was testifying, someone outside that home is giving this child kindness. Someone has to be. Please tell me they are. I believe his siblings do. Just to an extent, as much as a kid can understand. I say it when I was fostering dogs, I would say it to my foster dogs because they were misplaced, they were misplaced for the time being. But I always wanted them to feel like they were at home at my house. I wanted to read something. So I was pulling up. I want to share. Yeah, I do want to share screen. I want to show you guys what I was looking at here earlier this morning. So this is the police report or the incident report. Probable cause. No, I take that back. This is the probable cause affidavit. Okay. I'm not going to read all of it. I just wanted to read parts of it until trial starts. On Friday, January the 28th of 2022 at approximately 43 hours, 2 officers responded to redacted landing regarding a missing person investigation. Upon arrival, officers made contact with the reporting party, redacted, white female, who advised the following, redacted, who will be referred to throughout this report as redacted. Obviously, they're talking about Rowan. He was missing and had run away from home on several occasions before. She stated he has several behavioral disorders and advised he was in trouble at school the day prior, which is why she believed he ran away. She stated the school contacted her at approximately 15:45 hours this date to advise her he was not present in his last class, so he skipped school. She advised she waited in the pickup line, but he never showed up. So she was picking him up from school. We checked the surrounding areas and neighboring parks with negative results. Okay. On Sunday, January the 30th, 2 officers traveled to their residence in an attempt to make contact with redacted to see if redacted had returned home. We're assuming this is Rowan, right? They attempted to knock on the door with negative results. Officer Collins made a phone call to redacted, who advised she was not home currently and stated redacted had not returned home either. I don't know if she's saying her husband or Rowan there. They asked her if she and Officer Smith could enter the home to check for him, and she advised she did not want anyone to enter her residence. I mean, if she's not home, I get that, but still. Hang on. There's more. All right. On January 30th at approximately 2200 hours, Sergeant Kim Bark and I were traveling to the Ferriter residence. I made contact with blank and asked if blank had returned. Okay, so I'm thinking he made contact with the mom who asked if the son had returned home yet, and she advised he had not. I asked her if I could enter the residence to check for him or for clues in his bedroom regarding where he may be, and she denied me entry, stating she did not feel comfortable with officers inside her residence without, and it's redacted, present. I don't know if she's saying her without her being present or without her someone in the family being present. After a long conversation, she agreed to allow me into the residence only and stated Sergeant Kimbrough needed to wait outside. Redacted brought me inside of the residence. Oh, it must be one of the children, and directed me to a room immediately inside of the home and to the right of the front door. The room is described as a small office. Redacted stated had been converted into a bedroom. Inside of the room was a small crib to the left, and on the floor was a small plaid blanket and pillow that Redacted advised Redacted used, stating he blank somebody, that white male, I'm assuming that's the son, shared the room with the baby. I guess they shared the room with the baby. That's no, like, so they're putting him in there with the room with the baby after they're so fearful of the baby. I'm confused about that. Okay. They then took me through the kitchen and advised me he had toys and some belongings in the Florida room. They stated further there was a structure the family had built for him in the garage, and they brought me to the garage. So this is interesting because it sounds as if she wasn't home, so one of the kids let him in, but I'm not positive about that. But that's what is. Are y'all picking that up? It's hard to tell with all this that's redacted. So they found that room. Oh, I bet the husband was pissed. They found that room because she wasn't there? Yeah. So someone showed me the structure. The structure is described as a small room with a plain white door. The door was open and had a doorknob and deadbolt, both locking from the exterior of the room. To the left of the door was a light switch, also on the exterior of the room. Inside of the room to the right was a small plain box spring, and on top of that, a mattress with a gray sheet and a pillow. Straight in the room was a small dark colored desk with school books and small children's books, along with a foldable chair. Above the bed in the room was a black Ring brand camera. It should be noted the room was a small plain white structure with no paint or color on the walls and appeared to be bare drywall. The floor was a bare garage floor with parts of an indoor-outdoor rug covering it. While showing me the space, Redacted had several different explanations for the room, stating first the room was built as an office for someone. When questioned regarding the exterior lock, that person stated the room was used as storage for maybe mom was home, and maybe this is her, stated that this was storage for the family, and then advised it was a space used by all the children. When asked why there was a bed and box spring inside, that person finally advised the space was sometimes used by, I'm thinking Rowan. After speaking with them, I checked the surrounding areas for Rowan with negative results. All right. We can go to the next paragraph since I haven't started yet. On Monday, January the 31st, I traveled to school where it was Rowan's school, okay, where I made contact with teachers and staff. Okay, here we go. This is what I want. Along with Palm Beach School District Police Officer Dimmer. Hang on, I got more just so I can read it. Okay. All staff members advised that he had not returned to school and stated they would advise me if he did return. At approximately 1100 hours, Officer Dimmer called me and advised he believed that Rowan was somewhere on campus, stating he believed he saw him on a security camera. Detective Jordan and I, along with members of the Jupiter Police Department team, responded to the school. Members of the SWAT team or whatever deployed a drone and were able to locate him running near the front of the campus. Officer Dimmer and Detective Jordan made contact with him near the front of the campus, and he was subsequently transported to the Jupiter Police Department. Once back at the Jupiter Police Department, I conducted an initial fact-finding recorded interview with him. He advised he knew the difference between a truth and a lie and promised to tell the truth during the interview. He advised me he resides in his home. Okay, there's a bunch of stuff redacted here. But basically, I think it's saying he's naming like the parents and the kids who live there, right? I asked him to describe a typical day for him, and he stated in the morning he woke up by whatever time, because his door is locked. And he advised that they would wake him up in the morning, tell him to go to the bathroom, and then he would go back in his room. He stated someone would lock the door, and I'm thinking someone's a parent, and usually turn the lights off. He advised he would be in his room until mom or dad would return from dropping his other siblings off at school. Probably mom. He advised once mom was home, she would feed him breakfast consisting of a banana and a piece of bread and peanut butter. Okay, just quick side note right here, you guys. We were all getting sassy in the chat yesterday because we were like, what? They only gave him peanut butter sandwiches, that's all? Apparently he's pescatarian, so he does prefer a limited diet. But, I mean, there's other things they could kind of make, they could switch it up for him, but he stated after he was finished eating, he would come back into the room, or she would come back in the room, and he would get dressed and go to school. After school, he stated that she would pick him up and his siblings up and return home, and he would go back into his room. I asked him to describe his room, and he stated it was an 8x8. Something further stated the room had a lockable doorknob and a bolt lock from the outside, and there was a light switch on the outside of the room as well. He stated that one of his parents would always lock him in there, stating usually the bottom knob was the one locked. Okay, the bottom knob, not the deadbolt. He stated he has had to stay in his room when someone are not home or when they want him to be in there. When asked how often he is in the room, and he said a lot, I asked him if he was home, if he would be playing with friends or family, and he said no, and that he would be reading books in his room, and stated that he was not allowed to go anywhere else in the house. I asked him if he would like to be in his current room or a different room, and he stated a different room. Now, remember, guys, he testified, his testimony was yesterday, so you guys can go on there from yesterday and watch that, okay? For those new coming into the trial, a lot of sidebars so far. We've done more of that than we have listening to testimony. It's frustrating. It's also frustrating that we haven't been able to see a lot of videos and pictures in this. Now, mostly because there's children involved. I get that, but...
Okay, all right, so the state is publishing Exhibit 17. This is a document that's already in evidence, and you're very familiar now with the publishing process. It's the process by which they display to you the items that have been put in the evidence. So,
and Your Honor, just for record purposes, every video that we begin, I will be reading off the date for that video so it can be identified.
so that the record's clear.
Yes,
All right,
specifically January 6th, 2022.
Good morning. Head to the bathroom. Can you come back?
I'm gonna take stuff off the screen and just turn the captions on, so maybe that'll help us hear it better.
Get too close. Let's go.
Ready? You ready? Can you replay? Will you turn up your air during the day? We don't? Okay. Do you want to throw your blanket on there and make your bed nice? Are those dirty clothes? So put whatever you need to put in here. Put your dirty ones and dirty ones. Yeah. So this needs to be right here. Got it? Yep. Okay. Exactly a little bit.
Suppose you're doing homework on here, huh? The whole time, the last couple hours? Suppose homework, right? Any games? Are you blocking it so you can't try to be like on the camera? Are you doing that? Strategically? No. Let's go. Will you lie? You pee in there? No. Go. Go, that stuff's out of here. Give me that.
Said he was blocking the camera.
Now publishing January 7th, 2022.
Go.
Morning. Okay, let me get your clothes, get your food, get it going. Okay? Grab your clothes. What is dirty?
Yeah.
Eat, order, make the bed.
Where's your food? Give me your food. Roll that like the other ones.
And put your stuff together. Probably gonna be here for a sec. Okay. You all set? Yes, you get some. Say hi, Ryan. No, let's go. We're gonna go do that. No, it's wrong. He's gonna eat. Yeah, thank you. Let's go. Go. Go, 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 go. Let's go. Let's go. Go. So that's the way to bring your dishes to the bathroom. Change the extra garbage down Wear your shoes. Your dirty socks? Yeah. Your shoes out there. Let's just start making it bad over there, okay? Okay. Good night.
Now publishing January 8th, 2022.
Dirty. Yeah, let's go for that. We'll plug that in for you.
Let's get ready for you. Father's coming out. Here they come. Here they come. Congratulations, Nola. Good job, Nola. What are you doing? Why? You want to eat dinner? Yeah. Okay. We'll eat dinner. What's wrong with you? Nothing. Okay. Thank you, Mama, for bringing me dinner. Yeah, I'm hungry. Yeah, that'll be great. Thank you.
Now publishing January 9th, 2022.
Good morning. Here's your food, and you grab some clothes for sure and make your bed. I'm gonna take you out to the bathroom right now. So take your clothes. Anything else? Okay, here, you can start eating, and then help them take you out and get you. Alright, let's go brush your teeth. Dirty stuff. Cars, you're gonna have no cars for that time. Come up there. Come on. No, come on, maybe later. Hey, here's the phone. Go. We're gonna do bath time. I'm gonna get your cars from your room. Okay, man. We gotta go. No. Here, let's go. Hurry. Oh no, you have no cars. Oh no. Let's go. Here goes Mary. Here goes Fiona. We're gonna have no cars then. No, we're gonna have cars. Lights are gonna be turned off in a second. Wait, let's go. Right here. Let's go, Pierce. Let's go. Go get your cars.
You're gonna sit here. I want to see the screen for the camera. Don't block it. Don't try to be tricky. Okay. You need a chair? Yes. Did I give you that book? Yeah. It's good? Mm-hmm. Good information about the world. Maybe. Put that on your desk. Corner there. Okay. Holocaust.
You have to make something?
No, I have to just.
You have to watch it?
No, I have to like move the things. No. What are we doing on the trouble? I'm looking at it. So what? Nice. What's the goal and how much of this stuff? Huh? So what were you just saying? Yeah. Huh? Step aside. Are you doing anything you shouldn't have done? No. Playing any games? No. Sure. Yeah, sit there. Who put the air on? Mama did. Sit right here. Sure? Yeah. Tell me how. So you've not been with him the whole time?
No, I closed Chrome and it kicked me out.
Why did you close Chrome?
Because of closing out stuff.
What stuff?
All the things I put about.
You can waste my time. Back to search stuff. I'll find it. School will find it, or I'll eventually spend time to find it. But I don't want to waste my time searching what you've already been doing. If you're doing anything you shouldn't have done.
No. All constant stuff.
Huh?
All constant, man.
What were you doing on it tonight?
This personal line. That's what I'm taking.
You're supposed to do that?
Well, it's allowed. Everyone that can have it.
I think it's loud.
It's allowed. Like, it's not restricted.
Who's missing after that?
US history teacher.
Why?
Because I was trying to get back to the portal.
You don't click on something by accident. By accident. You're very deliberate when you do it. So what I can do is bring this to your IT people tomorrow at school, because it says suspicious activity reporting app. I'll let them know that something's happening there with this. Should I do that?
You know, that I pressed, you go to the new tab, I pressed SPBC bookmarks at the top, and it led me there. And then I realized it's the wrong thing, so I clicked on the other one, the portal.
Not an active routes or tip report appropriate. Here's this one.
There.
He said he was done with his homework, but he was still on his computer because it's something to do.
What were you searching?
This customization thing.
What?
Customization thing.
You're supposed to be doing that on your Chromebook?
Restricted, does that mean you should take $10?
No.
Right.
So you finished all your homework?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, all right, take the Chromebook then. Take it. So you say you're searching customization?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you go to the bathroom real quick? I'll walk with it.
Did you get, hey Tim, did you, I said the email open? Did the school email open?
Anything else for him? Did you turn the air on for him?
I did, yes.
Okay.
There, I'll give him a minute.
Yeah.
Here you go. Sticking any better? A little bit? You can't tell.
Okay. I'll see tonight, but I don't think I'm sleeping shredded.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a lesson, right?
Yeah.
All right. Good night.
You turn the light on? Okay, there, yeah.
Now publishing January 10th, 2022.
Dirty? Let's go. Should make your bed.
Ms. Black, are we at a stopping off point for a 10-minute break? All right, so ladies and gentlemen, it's 20 after. We've been going about an hour. We're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll start back up 11:30.
Judge is pissed. He's like, he is not look. He can't believe what he's seeing. He did not have a dad. He had a prison guard. That's right, Psychic. You're so right. Let's see if we could. While we're on breaks and stuff, I wanted to pull up some of these newscasts and stuff of things going on. And these are just like small clips of what happened.
Well, today, children of the Jupiter father accused of locking his adopted teenage son in a box gave witness testimony.
The first time we hear the boy himself describe what he went through, being locked up in the garage instead of being allowed in the house. Terry Parker was there to hear testimony and joins us live from the courthouse in downtown West Palm Beach. Terry?
Right, that teenage boy who was locked in a box-like garage for 4 years described what he said it was like. He said it was sad to abuse a child who was simply acting like a child. But in a surprise twist, he also says his parents and wishes everyone would forget it and move on. Emotional moments in
That was
court
her.
for Tim and Tracy Ferriter, face to face with their 16-year-old.
That was her, Patty. Patty, that was the woman. That's why she looked so familiar. She was the one with the drop jaw yesterday in the class, in the court. Watch. That's her.
And wishes everyone would forget it and move on. Emotional moments in court for Tim and Tracy Ferriter, face to face with their 16-year-old adopted son as he testifies in Tim Ferriter's child abuse trial. The boy describing how Ferriter locked him in an 8x8 garage room every night and much of the day from the time he was about 10 until 14.
Did you have any control over when the lights were on or when the lights were off? Who controlled that?
My parents, Tim or Tracy.
The boy, whom we're not identifying, described hours spent locked in a windowless room with a bucket for a bathroom, rarely being allowed in the house with his siblings to watch TV or have snacks, often left locked in the dark with just a few toys and textbooks. Prosecutor Brianna Coakley asked him how it made him feel.
To me, being locked in a room, it's dehumanizing. It's almost as bad as genocide. It's saddening to abuse a child that was just acting like a child.
But during cross-examination, a surprise reversal. The boy saying he doesn't blame his parents.
I don't have a bad image of Tim and Tracy. They just made a mistake. They were just acting out of frantic surprise of my actions. They weren't. I believe that they weren't trying to do any harm.
Yeah.
I believe that people should recognize that that was a mistake and forgive them and move on.
Defense attorney Priya Murad then recited a list of bad behavior she says led the parents to locking up their son: stealing, lying, hitting, hacking into the school computers, embarrassing his younger sister in class, accidentally pushing his baby brother off a bike, even pretending to be a member of the school board to one unwitting teacher he told he was evaluating.
I think in your words, you intentionally broke the rules you knew about at least 5 times a week.
Usually more, but yes.
He sounded scripted, Maddie. Yeah, maybe. This child, this kid is so smart, you guys. But he's turned off his emotions 100%. He showed no he doesn't have any emotions. Bless his heart, he doesn't have any. I bet he doesn't have any expectations of other people either. Can you imagine sitting there in that room and thinking, maybe tomorrow when they come in, they'll be nicer to me? Well, yeah, kids can be devils, but kids don't deserve that. Oh my gosh. Anyway, you guys, yeah, so what he was saying yesterday was just, to me, it was, I don't know. I don't know if I feel like he was scripted though, Maddie. I felt like it was pretty much the same as he was when the defense and when the prosecution questioned him. And what I still keep going back to is, why in the world do those children call their parents Tim and Tracy? Because I don't think they're doing it for the trial. They would still call them mom and dad. Well, what was their logical reason for no proper bathroom? Well, I can tell you one thing, Karen. It wasn't that there wasn't a plumbing outlet over there, because there's a washer and dryer right across from the room. Exactly. That's what I was thinking, Cynthia. The friends are like, who are you people that I've been hanging out with all this time? But the whole genocide and those just adjectives don't line up. It just doesn't sound like the 16-year-old boy. Yeah, but he's like way smart, Maddie. I mean, like, he seems really like he's smarter than us. He's so smart. He's well above, he's like way mature for his age. It's like bless his heart, how can he not get in trouble? He's got to let out his energy some way or another. He's trying to protect himself, Teresa. I agree. You know what else too I think is strange, guys? Is like, how does a child, you know how they talk about dissociative identity disorder? That's the word I'm trying to get out. Do you guys think that I think it's, could it be a portion of that where he just never shows that side of himself? Okay, I'm going to shut up now.
All right, before we get started, let me just make an announcement. I've been advised that there have been some instances of people taking photos with their cell phones or electronics in the courtroom. That is expressly and specifically prohibited unless you are a member of the press. It's been pre-authorized to either video these proceedings or to take still photography through our publicity coordinator. Anybody else is not authorized to be using their electronics in the courtroom unless you are an attorney or involved in either the state's legal team or the defense's legal team. Anybody else should turn your electronics off at this point, because I can't have anybody violating the rules and taking photographs or audio recordings of these proceedings when they've already been expressly advised prior to this that they shouldn't be doing that. So that's the court's ruling. Unless you, again, are a member of the either state or the defense legal team, or an attorney, or a member of the press that's already been pre-authorized to take video or still photographs. Everyone else should have your electronics turned off at this point.
For the record, the state is still publishing State's Exhibit 17, and we are on January 10th, 2022.
So try to get your socks, get your clothes. Just go through there? Yeah.
pictures?
No, it's by the show.
Okay, I'll go get them. Maybe right there. This is Derby. Okay, go from the garage. The back of my car? Yeah, that's probably clear. I'll come with you. I'm gonna just get Mary and I'll be right there. Okay. Let me get Mary, okay?
You want to take this thing to the next level? Let's do it. Let's do it in 4 or 2. Let's do it in 4 or 2. Let's go. Here's pajamas. Here's the stuff you can do. Go to pajamas. Do you hear me? What are you doing? Why can't you talk?
those wipes for your face. I don't know where they are. Did I do that?
These people should never, ever get any of their children back. I'm calling it right here. All their children need to be taken away. That's all I'm saying. That's the way I feel. That's the way I feel, okay? That's my opinion.
Do you swear or affirm that the Morning. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Wade Cooper Myers, MD.
What's your occupation?
I'm a psychiatrist, and I am also a child psychiatrist and a forensic psychiatrist, and I'm a professor of psychiatry at Brown University in Rhode Island.
Now, you mentioned that you're a medical doctor.
Yes.
Take us a little bit through your educational background.
I went to undergraduate college at Stetson University in DeLand, Florida, and I got a degree in biology. Then I went to medical school at Temple University in Philadelphia, where I got my MD degree. Then I went to University of Florida. Well, actually, before that, I did 1 year of general surgery at University of South Florida in Tampa. And then I switched over to psychiatry training, and I went to University of Florida in Gainesville, where I did a general psychiatry residency to become a psychiatrist. And then I did extra training in child and adolescent psychiatry, which was a 2-year fellowship there as well. And also I did a 1-year training program in forensic psychiatry, also at University of Florida.
What's the difference between general psychiatry and forensic psychiatry? Like, what is forensic psychiatry?
General psychiatry is more involved in the diagnosis and treatment of mental disorders. Forensic psychiatry is helping out the legal system in any way in which mental illness and the law may come together. So it could be criminal matters like the insanity defense. It could be child custody cases. It could be malpractice cases where you would opine on someone's medical care or psychiatric care of a patient. It's a broad array of things in forensic psychiatry.
Sir, can you pull the mic up a little closer to you, please?
Yes.
After you finish your fellowship at the University of Florida, and did you are you licensed in Florida?
I am, yes.
And what about Rhode Island?
Yes, I'm also licensed in Rhode Island.
Now, you mentioned that you're currently a professor at Brown University. What did you do in between that fellowship at the University of Florida and then going to Brown?
I was on the faculty at University of Florida for, I'm going to say about 15 years, 10 or 15 years, where I became a associate professor. Then I went to the University of South Florida, and I helped. I went there really to start a forensic psychiatry fellowship program, which we did. I was there at the University of South Florida for about 5 years. I was a professor there, and then for the last 14 years, I've been at Brown University, also where I was recruited to go up and to build a forensic psychiatry program.
Do you treat patients?
I do, yes.
And you said that one of your areas is child psychiatry. So are predominantly your patients children?
Yes, most of my patients are children. I also treat adults with a variety of mental conditions.
Now, as a professor, are you involved in teaching in the areas that we talk about?
I am, yes.
Tell us what you, broadly, what that means you do as far as the teaching responsibilities.
I give some lectures to students more in a lecture format, but a lot of my teaching is clinical instruction. And for instance, we have forensic psychiatry fellows who come and work with our faculty for a year in a training program. They become trained in forensic psychiatry, so they'll do cases with us, different types of cases. And then also we give them seminars every week, as well as they'll go to a law school class for a semester, one afternoon a week. We participate in that as well with them.
So sorry to interrupt. Do you do any academic research or publish in areas of child psychiatry or forensic psychiatry?
Yes, I have regularly been involved in research during my career.
And peer-reviewed scientific publications, that's what we're talking about?
Yes.
Now, as part of your work, do you also sometimes get involved to give an expert opinion in legal cases?
I do, yes.
Does that include in criminal cases?
It does.
Have you testified here in Palm Beach County before on criminal cases?
Yes, I have. I believe on at least several occasions.
And is that true in other places around the country as well?
Yes.
And so you have offered your expert opinion on topics involving psychiatry in places around the country. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is.
Now, did I reach out to you in this case to see if you could assist us in providing an expert opinion?
Yes, you did.
And did you agree to be involved and to review some of the items in this case?
Yes.
As part of that, did you review the witness statements that were given by the Ronan Ferriter and his sister, Fiona Ferriter?
Yes, I did.
And did you also have the opportunity to review their depositions?
Yes.
What about police reports? Did you have the opportunity to review some of the police reports and forensic evaluations done of the children in this case?
I did.
Did you also have the opportunity to review some of the videos that were captured from the Ring camera in this case?
I did, yes. I believe I reviewed in the neighborhood of 40 videos.
Now, did you also review some school records related to the child in this case, as well as some prior treatment records by other providers?
Yes, I did.
Now, I wanted to, based on your review of all of the documentation in this case, of the documentation that you reviewed in this case, were you able to reach a professional opinion as to whether or not the treatment that Ronan Ferriter received from his parents in this case was harmful?
Yes, I did. I felt it was severely harmful and very psychologically damaging to Ronan.
And why is that?
It was a long-standing pattern of harsh, cruel, and demeaning actions toward this child, as well as close to 3 years of essentially solitary confinement when he was not in school, as well as really sadistic punishments while he was locked away in the room. For instance, withholding meals if he misbehaved, taking his one book away as punishment, which is the one thing he had to do in the room towards the end, turning the lights out to punishment as punishment. And in fact, he talked about being afraid of the dark. And when the lights would go off when he was being punished, he would pull the sheet over his head and really feel terror.
Do you have an opinion as to whether or not this type of treatment of a child by the parents is malicious?
It's malicious. It's cruel. There's really
overall.
You can go ahead. Do you have an opinion as to whether or not this type of treatment is malicious?
Yes, my opinion is it's malicious. It's cruel. I can't think of any other way to describe it more accurately.
Now, even in cases where this punishment may be in response to maybe a negative or unwanted behavior of a child, is that change at all your opinion? If the child did something wrong and then the parent, this is how they are punishing them, does that change your opinion on whether or not this type of action by the defendants is malicious and cruel?
No, there's no set of circumstances concerning a child's behavior that would justify this sort of really torturous behavior.
Would this type of behavior as punishment or as a punitive measure, or would it result in a positive behavior modification by the child?
No, if I was asked that in a theoretical way, I would predict this sort of behavior to cause the child's reactions, the behavior, their psychological state to deteriorate even further.
And what kind of behaviors might you see as a result of that, hypothetically, in a child who is subjected to this type of behavior, this type of treatment?
It could go in a whole lot of directions that we see in children who are abused, children psychologically, emotionally abused, neglected, but it can go from depression to anxiety to self-injury, where they maybe even start cutting themselves, to trying to commit suicide, to aggression, to head banging, to problems with peers, problems with concentration, nightmares, sleep disturbances. The list is very long in abused children, how different children will manifest the signs of abuse.
Could it result in an increase of the type of behavior that is that the parent considers bad or inappropriate?
Yes, it can cause the child to have a more irritable mood. They can become aggressive with their peers. They can become aggressive with family members. Yes, they can they may often will try to run away.
Now, is there any justification or possibility of a positive result from this type of punishment of a child, this type of treatment?
No.
Now, what can you tell us about the type of psychological impact this type of treatment can have?
Again, it's a long list, but do you want me to kind of focus more
broadly
on Ronan, or?
I want you to say broadly first, and then we'll talk more specifically.
So it can have, in general, it can cause more internalizing symptoms where the child will become depressed or withdrawn or isolating of themselves from others, or it can go the other way, externalizing, where they might start acting out, running away, being aggressive. It can affect their schoolwork, where they can't concentrate, their grades start going down. It can cause a lot of problems with them being able to interact positively and in a good way socially with their peers. They may have problems on the playground. They may have problems with even just following the general rules of the school, whatever that might be.
Now, concentrating on kind of some of the videos that you were able to see of his reactions in the room. Anything about that you think was indicative of a psychological impact on the victim while he's in the room?
Well, yes, it's consistent with a child who has post-traumatic stress disorder. There was when the parent, his father, would come in the room and approach him, he would stiffen up, he would lower his head, you could barely hear his speech when he did talk, and he seemed to be in a very high state of fear. But that tenseness is though the adrenaline's flowing, and he's afraid of another abusive episode occurring or being harmed, or he said he was even afraid of being killed.
Now, do this type of treatment of a child, can it stunt their intellectual growth?
Yes, it can.
Can it stunt their psychological growth?
It can, yes.
Is there a reasonable likelihood when a person engages in this type of behavior towards a child that there is going to be psychological injury or mental injury as a result?
You said, is there
a likelihood?
Yes, there is a substantial likelihood.
Now, in this case, did you see, based on the evidence that you were able to review, is there a pattern of isolation of the child?
Yes, it's he for nearly 3 years was isolated in the cell for the better part of each day. As far as hours, it sounds like when he wasn't at school, let's say he's at school for 8 hours, he's then in the box for 14, 16 hours a day
Now,
on a daily basis. So yeah, a very, very much established pattern.
did you, and I think you say isolation, is it fair to say that there is also a pattern of confinement here of the child?
Yes, they're essentially one and the same in this case, it would seem.
Were you able to observe a pattern of a deprivation of the child?
Yes, there was emotional deprivation, there was physical deprivation, there was intellectual or cognitive deprivation where he wasn't really provided much in the way of anything to stimulate his mind or to entertain himself. I mean,
Is isolation, confinement, and deprivation considered an acceptable way to punish a child?
no, it's not. It would be counter therapeutic to disciplining a child. But we're not talking about a 5-year-old who might have a temper tantrum and you want to give them a timeout for 5 minutes in their room. I mean, that's something that timeouts are an accepted form of discipline.
So does it make a difference, in your opinion, the duration of the isolation, confinement, and duration and deprivation?
Oh, it's a huge difference. Sure. If it's a short duration for younger children, it can be appropriate. But again, I'm talking in terms of minutes, not hours. But in terms of doing it every day, day after day, for most of the day, there's just no comparison to say a short timeout with a younger child.
And even just looking at the time frame that happened in Florida, those 5 to 6 weeks, that amount of time frame, is that harmful?
Yes, undoubtedly it would be for about any child, I'm sure.
Now, would you consider, or would it be correct to characterize what the treatment that he was subjected to as solitary confinement?
Yes.
Is solitary confinement within the psychological and psychiatric and medical community, is that something that is considered appropriate for a child?
No, and in fact, years ago, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, which I'm a member of, came out with a statement strongly arguing against children, even in juvenile detention centers, having solitary confinement because it's detrimental psychological impacts.
Is it considered damaging to brain development of a child?
It is, yes. That's another aspect of it, is that it can cause literally changes to one's brain structure.
Now, even within the setting of a criminal justice system where it might be part of a child subjected to that in the criminal justice system, is it acceptable for them to be in long-term solitary confinement?
No, it is not.
Even in those circumstances of a criminal justice system, is a child, when confined to a cell, given access to water and facilities to relieve themselves?
Well, yes, it would be very different. There's a bed in the room. There's a toilet. There's a sink where they always have access to water, so they wouldn't be subject to a dehydration. For instance, there's officers where they can always call out to somebody if they need something. There's lighting. It would never be pitch black in a juvenile detention center. So they would not be subjected to that sort of sensory deprivation of being in a totally dark room for hours at a time. And they're served meals. There wouldn't be any holding back of meals as some sort of punishment for a child into the detention center.
Now, discussing the isolation specifically, is there a detrimental impact to a child to be socially and physically isolated the way that Ronan Ferriter was from the rest of the family?
I'm sorry.
Is there a negative impact associated with the social and physical isolation?
Well, that's part of the trauma of this, is that he's he's kept from having a normal family environment where he comes out and is socializing with his peers and spending time with his parents and doing things together and having fun and just having a normal family experience. He's segregated as soon as he gets home, and the children all know he's in the box, but it's giving him the message that you're not valued, you're unloved, you're not important, you're not part of this family, where you're being rejected.
You're bad. Is it sending a message that he fundamentally is bad?
Yes, and that you're right, and that you're bad. You're not able to be part of this family because you're bad.
Now, during the course of reviewing the evidence in this case, did you become aware of whether or not his confinement in the structure in the garage was absolute? Was it at all times?
With infrequent exceptions, yes. I mean, he did it for occasionally have some after school activities, as I understand, more so I think in Arizona than when he got to Florida, where he might be allowed to run track or do some track at school.
And he went to school.
Yes.
You saw that. And there were, did you find that there were some also infrequent examples of when he was allowed to interact with the family?
Yes, he went to, for instance, siblings softball practices. They did go out to, I think they went out to dinner a few times.
Does the isolation and confinement and deprivation, does it have to be absolute, like at all times, in order for it to be harmful?
No, it doesn't. No.
In reaching your opinion that the conduct that this defendant engaged in towards his son was harmful and was malicious and cruel, did you take into consideration the fact that there were occasions where he wasn't in the room?
I did, yes.
Now, I want to talk.
It's the totality of it, that he's literally for 3 years spending most of his life, the majority of it, in solitary confinement with very little stimulation and interaction when he is in there.
Now, I want to talk for a second about sensory deprivation, which I think you mentioned. What is sensory deprivation?
It's a lack of any kind of external stimuli, really, that is so important to adolescent development, like being able to go out and play with your peers or your friends after school, or ride a bike around the neighborhood, or throw a baseball, or come out and eat dinner with your family, or have some things to play with, like a computer or an iPad, or games or Legos, or something to do to occupy your mind.
Now, what kind of impact can that type of sensory deprivation have?
Well, in extreme cases, children can literally become psychotic and lose contact with reality, but it very predictably causes severe psychological problems, again, like depression, or repetitive behaviors like self-injury, or self-stimulation behaviors, that somehow you start doing things to stimulate yourself because you need something to occupy your mind after a while when you're in a locked room with nothing to do, hour after hour after hour.
Now, what about being in the dark? How does that impact someone? I mean, is that bad?
In general, it would be frightening for, I believe, any child to be locked in a room and have the lights totally turned out. But even more so when that happens and you know you're going to be in that room with little or no ability to contact anybody if something bad happens. I mean, you can't even come out and use the bathroom. You have to find your way to a bucket in a dark room and I guess it's in the corner, and try to figure out how to go to the bathroom in the dark in a bucket. And then you're going to be with that bucket for the remainder of the night, depending on what time you use the bucket.
Is that type of forced sensory deprivation, being forced to sit in the dark and have no control over the lights, is that harmful?
Yes, it's a form of psychological trauma. It's really a form of torture to do that to a child.
Now, you mentioned the bucket. I want to talk a little bit about that. What kind of impact, or how can that be perceived by a child who is forced to use that as a way in which to relieve themselves?
It's mean, it's degrading, it's unsanitary, it's extremely unpleasant to at least to have to be in the room and then locked in a room with your own excrement with no way to do anything about it.
Now, can being subject to that kind of humiliating and degrading lifestyle impact cause a psychological injury to a child?
Psychological what?
Injury.
Yes, it definitely can. It's psychological abuse is the simplest way to put it. And it's also really a form of medical neglect because of the unsanitary aspects of it.
Now, would you say, or do you have an opinion as to whether or not these specific factors are cruel, demeaning, and injurious? I think you already said that for the having to use the facilities in a bucket. What about giving little stimulation or limiting the stimulation of the child?
That's another form of psychological abuse when you limit an adolescent's abilities and access to intellectual or academic stimulation when they're at home.
What
So
about
you're really stunting their brain development and their intellectual development?
What about in situations, or what about when there is extreme control or lack of access to food, where their access to food or snacks is extremely limited or controlled by someone other than the child?
So adolescence is a time when you're supposed to be developing increasing independence and increasing ability to take care of yourselves, including food choices and learning to feed yourself and prepare foods. And this is the opposite of what we see with Ronan, who gets fed separate from the family, and he gets fed typically leftovers. He gets the same breakfast about every morning. It looks like a banana and a piece of bread with some butter on it. So it's really ongoing, another example of the psychological abuse.
Okay, we left off where they picked the little boy up, and he was running across the campus of the school. They picked him up, they brought him in, and he was telling them that he's woken up every day by his parents. He's awoken. Well, I don't know. They wake him up every day. All right. And then he'd stay in his room. She'd come back with breakfast. He'd finish eating. She'd come back into the room, and he would get dressed and go to school. After school, he stated that Mom would pick him up and his siblings up and return home, and he would go back into his room. I asked if they would describe his room, and he stated it was an 8x8 box. Further stated that he had a lockable doorknob and deadbolt lock, all on the exterior of the room, including the light switch was also on the exterior of the room. I already read that part earlier. Okay. Would always lock him in the... So then he stated that he has to stay in his room when somebody's not at home and when they want him to be in there. When asked, and he said that he would be reading his books in his room, and stated he was not allowed to go anywhere else in the house. I asked if he would like to be in his current room or a different room, and he stated he would like to be in a different room. I asked him why he ran away, and he stated, because I feel like no one loves me. Now, you think about what that is right there, and how you heard this father yelling at him. I would feel unloved too. Even in your darkest moments, Like for me, even in my darkest moments, I always knew my parents were there. This kid doesn't even have that. I asked him if he felt safe at home, and he stated he did not because his father gets really aggressive with him. When asked to describe how his dad gets aggressive, he stated once he slammed him against a wall by his neck and struck him in the face and with an open hand. He asked how often he had been physical with him, and he stated that it happened a lot in Arizona. I asked him to describe the discipline he receives, and he stated that it says profane and angry, and that he sometimes spits in my face. Further stated his discipline consists of spanking with a belt. I asked him if he ever sleeps in the room with him, and he stated he does not. He advised the longest he could remember being locked inside of the room was approximately 16 to 18 hours. He advised redaction provided him with a bucket to go to the bathroom, and stating that he has used the bucket several times in the past. He advised that he was upset. He advised he uses the bucket. He's made to dump it out in the backyard of the residence and clean it out. Well, that could become a problem, and for the neighborhood. I'm just saying. Stated he eats most of his meals in his bedroom, which usually consist of leftovers after the rest of the family eats. Advised he is not in his room or at school. He is outside in the yard doing yard work. Tim makes him do until being locked back inside the room, and he stated Tim is very physically abusive with him, and he's fearful of him that he may knock him out. He advised him that he had a room in Arizona similar to the room he has now, stating that the room was approximately 8 by 10 foot. Near the end of the interview, he advised he did not want to return to his family and pleaded me to arrest him, stating he would rather be in prison than be back at home. Let me reread that. Near the end of the interview, Ronan advised me he did not want to return to his family and pleaded for me to arrest him, stating he would rather be in prison than back at his home. He says further he has self-harm thoughts based upon statements he was placed under a Law Enforcement Baker Act and transported to JFK North evaluation. On Tuesday, February the 1st, members of the Special Units victim of the Florida Department of Children and Family Services and I removed redacted from her school, while other members removed redacted from school and redacted from the Ferriter residence. Both children were brought to the Child Protective Team in West Palm Beach for forensic interviews. Okay, hang on, I gotta change the page. One child was interviewed first by Child Protective Coordinator Shelby Halas. While speaking with her, she confirmed the allegations made by Ronan, stating his room is in the garage and he gets put into his room when he is either misbehaving or in trouble, and stated he is in trouble a lot. She advised that her door has a lock on it, or his door has a lock on it that is locked from the outside, and stated he wanted to do the real thing. And stated if Ronan is in his room, the door is locked. When discussing the room, she began crying and became emotional, advising she wanted to do the right thing for Ronan. She further stated there is a camera in the room where the parents monitor him. She described the punishments received are extremely different from the ones she and her other siblings received, advising he gets, when either her or someone else are in trouble, they get their phone taken away or other residence restrictions. However, when it's him being in trouble, he gets locked in his room, made to do yard work or write sentences. She advised she had seen, I'm going to say it's the father, grab Ronan by the neck, but has not otherwise seen him be physically abusive, but stated she heard redacted through the walls of his bedroom and hers. She stated that somebody has told her he has been hit with a belt and a jump rope. She advised some redaction has been locked in his room for hours at a time and uses a bucket to go to the bathroom in and stated he has used the bathroom on the floor before. Oh my goodness, bless his heart. After blank interview, and I'm going to, you guys, when I say blank moving forward, that's what means redacted. After blank interview, blank had her interview. During that interview, she confirmed all of the statements. Redacted and redacted made somebody advise. She advised she does not know exactly what Ronan's room looks like, as she has not seen it in some time, but stated she knows the room is in the garage and has a lock on the exterior to keep him inside. She stated she missed him and wished he were not in trouble, as she was not able to play with him lately. She stated over the weekend while he was missing, somebody took her and another child to Tampa for a softball tournament. Based on the information gained from the forensic interviews of the children, a search warrant for the ring device located in the child's room was sought, received, and executed. Thousands of videos were obtained which showed him being repeatedly locked inside of his room daily. Each day he was placed in the room and you could hear the door close and deadbolt lock. In several videos, you can hear and see both, I think that's Tracy and Timothy, yelling at him. In one video in particular, he was locked in the room after being found to have stolen chocolate and cookies from the kitchen, despite being told he was not allowed to have them. This behavior resulted in him having the covers removed from his mattress picked up and tossed against the wall, and Timothy grabbing him against the arm, yelling at him. Each morning, Timothy greets him. He asks him, "Is it dirty?" and points to the bucket he has to use to relieve himself in, that is kept in the corner of the bedroom. In one video, he advises the bucket is dirty. Timothy yells at him to clean it, and Ronan goes off camera. So I think I read this wrong. I think they're basically saying he greets him in the morning with, "Is it dirty?" Which, after hearing that testimony, those videos, yeah, that sounds right. Oh my goodness. On Wednesday, February 2nd, Detective Jordan and I traveled to the previous Ferriter residence located at whatever address in an attempt to make contact with the current owner. While there, we made contact with an owner, I'm not going to say her name, who advised the following. Although she knew the Ferriter, she had never been inside the residence, but stated the current owner had noted a creepy room in the garage. When asked to expound further, Lynch stated the room was only able to be locked from the outside and she only saw the walls, but stated the current owners had it removed. She provided me with the current owner's name and phone number. After speaking with her, I called the current owner, later identified as blah. I conducted a sworn recorded interview with the new owner and confirmed that there was a room in the garage that he had removed because the room could only be locked from the outside, and he believed the room was made to keep someone else inside of it. He advised the realtor of the Ferriters described the room as a bonus room. However, when he was shown the room, it had a small child-sized bed inside with a comforter. He provided me with the inspection documents for the residence, which showed photographs of the room. Although the Ferriters purchased the residence at blank in 2014, excuse me, it is unknown when the room in the garage was built or for how long Ronan was locked inside. On Friday, February the 4th of 2022, Ronan was released from the care of the JFK Medical Center and transported to the Child Protection Team by forensic interview. The case coordinator, Shelby Hallas of the Child Protection Team, conducted the interview. During the interview, he confirmed he is made to stay locked in his bedroom in the garage and further confirmed it is an 8 by 8 foot space with a door that has a deadbolt and a doorknob lock that are both locked from the outside. He stated the longest he can recall being locked inside the room is 18 hours. He advised he does not have a bathroom in his room, but stated he uses an orange home. I don't know what that means. It's literally says the word oranges in the color orange home. Maybe that's supposed to be an orange bucket. Oh, my bad. It's the way it's broken up. It looks like it's a whole new paragraph. He uses an orange Home Depot brand bucket to urinate and defecate in. He was asked about discipline during the interview, and he advised that he had received spankings before, both with a leather belt and jump rope. This is just saying the same thing over again. He stated the spankings would take place in the bedroom, and he would be naked, bent over his bed. He stated he could recall one spanking was so painful he fell off his bed in pain. Based upon the above described investigation, there's probable cause to believe the defendant Timothy D. Ferriter willfully tortured, maliciously punished, and willfully and unlawfully caged a child. So that's it of that report. I just thought it was really important to hear it for you guys.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're in the middle of the direct examination of the current witness. So with that, Ms. Coakley, you ready to proceed?
Yes.
All right, you may do so.
Cher, you're lurking. Hey, Cher. We see you, Cher.
Now, I want to talk for a second about the impacts that harsh, cruel,
Okay,
demeaning,
Patty.
and injurious treatment of a child can have. Can that have an impact on the child's view of morality?
Yes, it would be an important part of how they learn to be moral, responsible human beings. Really, is a big part of that is modeled by your parents. So the modeling he got was certainly had some serious moral problems, in that it's giving him various messages like violence is okay, and isolating people is okay, and withholding food is okay, and being choked is okay. Those sort of things. These are the most important role models in your life, or your parents.
Can that create a distorted view of what is morally appropriate behavior?
Very much so, yes. After months or years of this, it becomes normal to the child, despite how pathological or abnormal it is. They begin to see this as just normal, a normal part of life.
Now, can that distortion of appropriateness also extend to the child's view of themselves?
Yes, it can. And one of the ways it might do that is that the child internalizes being treated like this, and sees themselves as the bad, responsible one. With they have the moral problems. It's their fault that this is happening, clearly, because it keeps happening to them. They think it must be in some way my fault.
Even in situations where there's kind of like pervasive, ongoing abuse or trauma inflicted by a parent caregiver, can a child who is subject to that still have affection for the abuser?
Yes, that's very common.
Why does that occur? Or how does that occur, especially in a situation
Some of it
like
is
this?
just it's built into children that if you provide them care, and you take care of them and give them a place to live and feed them and get them to school, that sort of thing, the attachment system does kick in, and they connect to that person. They form a bond.
So a child can come away from an abusive situation and still have affection or allegiance to the abuser.
Yeah, that's very, very typical.
Now, I want to talk for a second about stealing as something that it can occur within is that something, a behavior that can result in children that have been subject to abuse or neglect?
Yes, you're stealing, you're talking about.
Stealing,
Yes,
yeah.
and particularly in this case, kids who've had that early psychosocial deprivation and really lack of adequate parenting in their first couple of years of life, or a year and a half in his case.
Is it when a child is exhibiting that type of behavior, especially when there's a known history of some kind of neglect or abuse, is it therapeutic or appropriate treatment to address that behavior to deprive the child of access to some of the items?
You mean which items?
Like if a child is stealing food or candy, if that is something that occurs and that's something that's been noticed, in order to address that behavior therapeutically, what would be the appropriate way to address it?
Well, to try to talk to them about it and try to understand and explore their feelings about why this behavior is continuing, and then help them gain insight into the fact that you did have a very difficult early childhood, and kids like that will have this urge to keep hoarding and taking food, because in the back of their brain and at an instinctual survival level, they're thinking, I've got to keep getting food and hoard it, because at any point I could start going hungry again and there'll be nothing to eat. So to help them gain insight and to then give them interventions, or that's too strong of a word, but then to give them regular snacks and reassure them they're always going to be able to get snacks if they start really feeling that anxiety or need to eat something. So not restrict it, but let them know it's always here, and make that a reality. Not that you are going to have them eat 5 Big Macs a day, but you'd have to tailor what sort of meals and snacks you'd let them have.
Can that type of hoarding and inclination and kind of compulsive to get food, can that occur even in children that are otherwise well fed and maybe not like starving, who've had the previous trauma?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Now, is limiting or severely controlling a child's access to food and snacks and water, is that something that is a therapeutic treatment for this type of behavioral problem?
It's counter therapeutic. It goes against the treatment, because you're teaching them it's true. Those very sort of primitive feelings you have that there's not enough to eat and food may not always be accessible, you're now keeping it a reality instead of helping them get over that insecurity.
And so when you're saying it's counter therapeutic, does that mean that it can make the behaviors actually worse?
Yes.
Overruled.
Does that mean that it could increase, or would that have what kind of impact would it have on the behaviors?
It reinforces it. It might increase it. It may just keep it, sustain it. It depends on the child, but I would not predict that would make it any better at all.
Now, you mentioned social deprivation and cognitive deprivation. What are those things?
So children really of any age, and probably it's true for adults too, but they need consistent caregiving. They need nurturance. They need support. They need affection. They need to be held or hugged. They need to be shown empathy so that they know that their needs are recognized and being met, so they can develop confidence and emotional security in themselves. So the pathological care would be really the opposite of those things.
What do you mean that the pathological care?
Well, the kind of parenting that you wouldn't want to see for a child who's come from this sort of early deprivation is care that wouldn't be supportive and consistent and nurturing and affectionate.
The type of care that you saw that occurred between January, that's on the videos, between January 5th and January 28th, will you characterize that as supportive, caring, empathetic care?
No, I would see it as the opposite of those.
Okay, how would you describe it?
Unempathic, mean, frightening, not in any way trying to recognize what's going on with the child, but just for imposing your will in a harsh disciplinary fashion.
Now, Dr. Murray, are you saying that like a parent can't yell at a child?
No, not at all.
Are you saying that a parent can't discipline a child if they do something that they behave in a way that's inappropriate?
No, you have to discipline children in an appropriate way, sure, for issues, misbehaviors.
Are you saying that a parent can't punish a child if they do something that requires punishment?
prefer to use the term discipline. Punishment has somewhat of a negative connotation, but you could look at it as punishment, I suppose, if it's reasonable and mild.
Okay, so what is more appropriate and also developmentally appropriate for a child of this age, you would characterize as discipline?
What would
Well, discipline is more appropriate than punishment for a child, a 14-year-old child of this age.
Yes.
What's the difference, I guess, between what is appropriate and then what is harmful?
The simple answer would be what's in the best interest of the child, and is what you're doing, whatever it is it going to help the child learn why this problem is, why their behavior was not good? Is going to help give them ideas or ways to not engage in this behavior in the future, give them alternatives, to turn it into a learning experience. At the same time, with enough of discipline that it does get their attention if you think it needs it. I mean, some kids, they get a harsh word from a parent and they're good to go for a year. Other kids need a lot more hands-on intervention. It depends on the child's temperament and personality.
Now, I want to talk about kind of the impact that cognitive deprivation or intellectual deprivation can have on a child's creation of their own identity. How does that impact that?
It's sort of a couple different things, two different things there, but the deprivation has actually been shown in longer term studies to lower children's IQ, their IQ scores. So their intelligence level doesn't rise as high as somebody who isn't deprived or mistreated over the years.
Now, in cases where children are subject to cognitive deprivation or intellectual deprivation, do you see instances of that child engaging in fantasy or lying? Or can you see that?
Yes.
Why does that happen?
Some kids will start engaging in fantasy thinking and make up stories, and it's a coping mechanism to try to sort of fill the void of having so little mental stimulation or intellectual or cognitive outlets. So they then begin creating their own stories and fantasies to sort of fill that hole.
Now, I want to talk about a child expressing frustration and anger. Is a child expressing frustration and anger the same thing as violence necessarily?
No, not at all. But violence would be one sliver of children who are frustrated and angry. Some will act violently.
Now, during the course of the review of some of the videos, did you see a few videos where Ronan is expressing inside the room frustration or anger?
Yes. Or a great deal of emotional pain that he doesn't know how else to release, it seems like, than when he starts just like tearing the posters off the wall or kicking his Legos around.
Now, just generally, outside of the specific facts of this case, is something like kicking Legos or screaming in frustration or tearing posters off the wall is for a 14-year-old child. Is that like a clinically significant type of anger or frustration just in general if a 14-year-old does that?
In and of itself, that's not necessarily a pathological or a behavior or some sign of serious mental illness. If it's infrequent and the child has really had a terribly, say, frustrating experience or something, they might come home and kick something on the floor. But no, in and of itself, no.
Could it be a completely normal expression of frustration or anger in a 14-year-old boy?
It could be, yes.
To react to maybe some kind of adverse experience or just whatever frustration it is.
Yes.
Now, in this type of situation, does that Ronan being in that situation, locked in the room alone and having that type of response, does that tell you anything about how he's dealing with the trauma of the situation?
Well, he's only got a limited number of things he can do with all this angst and emotional pain and the effects of this mistreatment building up and building up. It's got to come out somehow. It always comes out one way or another in human beings. And it seems like in him, the only sort of outlets he's really got are to kind of throw things around or kick whatever's in the room that's left. He did He did become suicidal a couple times from it as well.
So the
Which would be
only,
another way that you could get those sort of feelings. Unfortunately, a method to get those out or deal with them.
so in the room itself, the only control he has is over the immediate items in the room.
Staying, rephrase, counsel.
In the room itself, what does he have the capacity or the agency to control?
What did he have?
Yeah, about his physical environment.
Well, very little, because he's in a box, and essentially the only other things in there are a bed and a sheet and a pillow and a desk, and I believe towards the end again one book.
Now, at some point, there might be some discussion in this case about more specific situations when a child has more specific behavioral needs than an ordinary child, or and we might discuss reactive attachment disorder. Are you familiar with what that is?
Oh yes, I am.
What is it?
It's a diagnosis, a condition where a child is deprived, usually during the first 2 or 3 years at least of their life and earlier, of consistent, supportive, appropriate parenting. So they don't have regular nurturance or contact with a caregiver, a parent. So they don't have the chance to sort of form secure attachments to a parent or two, which is what they're programmed to do.
And then, so something has to occur, just so I'm understanding you correctly, something has to occur early in life that makes it difficult for where they weren't able to form an attachment.
Well, yes, they're not having a responsive, tender care. They're being left alone for long periods of time. When they are fed, it might just be with a bottle a few times a day. Otherwise, they're left laying there unattended or with very little stimulation, and this results in their brain not developing properly, their emotional system not developing properly. Even physically, they don't grow as well. And moreover, their head size isn't even necessarily as big as isn't the size that that it should be.
Now, in a child who does have an attachment disorder, is a child with this disorder necessarily violent towards themselves or others? Is that like something that always happens?
That's not actually a diagnostic criteria for reactive attachment disorder. Violence is not even one of the defining criteria or criterion of that.
Is there generally accepted, if a child does have some type of attachment disorder, and specifically reactive attachment disorder, is there generally accepted therapeutic interventions within the scientific community to address that?
The main treatment that has been shown to work is to get the child out of the problematic, uncaring environment, the pathological environment, as quick as possible, and put them with either a foster family or a stable relative, or have them adopted into a good parenting situation. I mean, that's the treatment, and get them back on a normal course of development.
And so we're talking about a good parenting situation. Do you mean stable, nurturing, that addresses the child's needs?
Yes.
Now,
that works, and the majority of children with RAD, reactive attachment disorder, have substantially diminished or even resolution of their RAD symptoms over time.
Is it considered therapeutically acceptable or appropriate to isolate, confine, or deprive a child who might have a history that lends them to having an attachment disorder?
No, it's just what you wouldn't want to do to a child with reactive attachment disorder, because that isolation and lack of contact and lack of affection are the things that created it in the first place. So you want to undo that by doing the opposite to the child with good parenting.
Would it exacerbate any attachment issues if they were there to treat a child like Ronan Ferriter was treated?
Yes, it would. Yes, it wouldn't. Yes, simple answer.
Now, what about a child? You mentioned that, in your opinion, there were some indications that there was a post-traumatic stress disorder indicated here.
Yes.
Would this type of treatment in any way address or help a child with post-traumatic stress disorder?
Well, no, I believe that's the cause of him having post-traumatic stress disorder is the abusive treatment that he received.
Now, would this type of treatment worsen the behavior or increase symptoms?
Yes.
Now, did you, as part of this case, have the opportunity to review a deposition given by a Dr. Rappa?
I did.
And she made some opinions about this case as well, correct?
She did, yes.
Did you agree with any of the opinions that Dr. Rappa made?
I did. In particular, she did describe the behaviors that Ronan was experiencing and the punishment, the isolation, the abuse as inappropriate and unacceptable. She referred to Ronan having complex post-traumatic stress disorder, partly from his experiences in Vietnam when he was in the orphanage, but I don't believe that would really add up, because PTSD is from being traumatized, be it physical abuse or a car accident or being caught in a hurricane or whatever it might be, or seeing something terrible happen to a family member. But being neglected and left alone doesn't cause post-traumatic stress disorder. So I saw nothing in the records that he had experienced any early traumas in his first couple of years of life when he was in Vietnam, year and a half.
So you would be in agreement with Dr. Rappa that there are indicators that the victim in this case has experienced trauma?
Definitely, yes.
The source of that trauma is a little bit of a disagreement, if I'm understanding you correctly.
If I'm understanding her deposition correctly, yes.
But would you agree with her her opinion that regardless of the source of the trauma, this is not the way that a child with PTSD should be treated?
Well, right, because you're continuing to inflict the trauma on the child, and the PTSD comes from the trauma, so you're just doing nothing but worsening the child's PTSD with more and more of the same traumatic experiences.
I think we talked about, in general, a child, that this would be harmful. If a child has specific, because of their history, has behavioral issues or maybe even a medical diagnosis, does that change whether or not this is an appropriate type of punishment for a child?
I can't come up with any kind of explanation that would justify the treatment Ronan went through as appropriate.
The fact that there might be indications that because of his history and because of his treatment that he was, vulnerable or psychologically complex, does that increase the risk to him psychologically to be subjected to this type of treatment?
Yes, above and beyond being especially vulnerable, given he is a child, yes, that would even increase the risk more.
That's all the questions I have.
Cross.
Good afternoon, doctor.
Good afternoon.
Let me start with have your list of testimony in cases, civil and criminal. It's a pretty extensive list. You've testified in Palm Beach County before, correct?
Yes.
And looks like all but one defendant, all were for the state. Is that correct?
I haven't reviewed it, but I'll take your word for it.
I'm happy to have you review it if you want.
I trust you.
All right. And can you tell me what you're being compensated for your testimony here today?
I'm sorry?
How much are you being compensated for your testimony?
I'm being compensated for my time, but $350 an hour.
All right. And how much time have you put into the preparation of your testimony here today? Approximately.
Preparation for testimony?
I'm going to break it down. Yes, testimony.
I would say in the neighborhood of 5 hours.
All right. And in addition to that, any other preparation that you did, how much time did you put in?
Reviewing the records, I have a sheet on my office desk. I'm going to estimate it's probably in the ballpark of probably 8 hours, 9 hours of record review to get through all the materials, which I tried to reread as much as I could in the last day or two, because there's a lot of information.
Yeah, and we'll get to what you reviewed in a minute, but I appreciate your answer. I'm looking at your CV, very extensive, thick CV because it has all the publications that you wrote, plus those which you've contributed to, correct?
Yes.
I'm going to go through a few here. I noticed, going back a little ways, in '94, you wrote one called Sexual Homicide by Adolescents.
Yes.
Staying with the '90s, '95, you wrote one, Psychopathology, Biopsychopathology Factors, Crime Characteristics, and Classification of 25 Homicidal Youth.
Yes.
Staying with the '90s, you wrote one called The Psychopathology and Personality in Juvenile Sexual Homicide Offenders.
Yes.
In 2000, you wrote one with a co-author called Anger and Styles of Expression Among Juvenile Sexual Homicide Offenders.
Yes.
Jump forward a little. 2002, I see one, The Sexual Assault of Boys Incarcerated in Jails.
Yes.
2005, Personality Comorbidity in Adolescent Females with ADHD.
Yes.
I know you wrote that with others. I'm just trying to move it along, though. There's one that you wrote with somebody else in 2006, The Motivation Behind Serial Sexual Homicide. Is it sex, power, and or control or anger?
Yes.
2008, The Relationship Between Serial Sexual Murder and Autoerotic Asphyxiation.
Yes.
I tried that word twice and didn't get it. Jumping forward a little, 2012, Adolescent Parricide and Psychopathy.
Oh, psychopathy, yes.
Psychopathy, thank you. What's parricide?
The murder of a parent by a child.
You wrote a book as well.
I did, yes.
It's hard to get, but I got your book.
It's out of print.
It's out of print, but you know, someone still had it. It's called Juvenile Sexual Homicide. It's a 2002 book.
Yes.
And you've also contributed in chapters in other books, correct?
I have.
So for example, Current Perspectives on Conduct Disorder, and that was for the Adolescent Medicine State of the Art Review.
Yes.
Serial Offending in Childhood.
Yes.
The Juvenile Justice System, Delinquency, and the Juvenile Court.
Yes.
So you've written extensively on, seems a lot of your focus is on when juveniles commit crimes. That's a bulk of your work of study, correct?
Really, it's been more in the area of homicide, and often probably the majority of the homicide research I've done has been with children, meaning people under the age of 18.
Who commit homicides.
Yes.
And you're in those articles I've looked at in your book, you examine the types of maybe common traits or commonalities that might help one inform one on a child who's growing up that might commit crimes?
Well, yeah, you hope that it would have some impact on predicting it in children to avoid or help cut down the number of murders in the future. Yes, that would be the ultimate aim.
So there's and in a couple of the articles, and in fact in your book, you go through some checklists of the types of those common factors, correct?
Yes.
Pulling out of your book. Let's see here.
Approach.
Really? I mean, it really is. It's Defense 101. They always do this. They always try to say, "Oh, how much are you getting paid?" I mean, that's just that they wouldn't be doing their job if they didn't do that, right? But I've never seen him like go in after like all of his. Obviously, he's done a lot of research. Obviously, he's just letting the jury know all the books he's written. Books require research. Hello. So, are you not just padding his resume when you're doing this? Giving him all of his extra knowledge of all the stuff that he's done to the jury that they didn't have already. Did he just open a Durrell door? I think he did. Well, on that report I just read, Luis, they said that he said when the bucket wasn't there, he had to use the bathroom on the floor. So that's why the parents put the bucket there. It wasn't for his convenience, it was for theirs. I think that's where they're going, Karen. They're going to try to come back and say, okay, so he's leading he's tying this whole, okay, you did this book and this book says that it could lead to someone who's going to be dangerous, hurt other people. So I think that's where he's trying to go. That's what I'm thinking with the book thing.
You talked a lot about psychopathy on your direct. There is a thing called a PCLR, correct?
Yes.
And what is that?
That is the psychopathy checklist, and it's 20 items that you rate to get an idea of how much of a really a criminal personality they have.
So again, on direct examination, you discussed psychopathy, correct?
I don't recall that I did.
Did you make any opinion today about connecting psychopathy with what happened in this case?
In the defendant?
Yes.
Did I rate the level of psychopathy in Mr. Ferriter?
Nope. Did you say that the types of environment that that Ty was in this situation that he had at his home, that it could have it has an impact on a child's psychopathy?
As I recall, I used the word psychopathology, meaning mental illness, not psychopathy, something very different.
All right, so the objection sustained. You need to move on, Mr. Wade.
Let me ask you about things you reviewed. You reviewed, so the state provided you a list of items, correct?
Yes.
About 95 pages of items, included witness statements.
Yes.
When you say witness statements, did that include the statements the witnesses made during the trial?
No.
Did you observe those or read those in any way?
No.
And when I'm saying witnesses, I'm being specific to RF and FF, Ronan and Fiona.
Forgive me, I've been using his first name.
Yes.
Should I say RF?
It can be confusing a little on the names. So I'm going to go with Ronan.
Okay.
So Ronan or Fiona. You did not watch or hear or read those trial testimonies.
What I had was their the child protection team interviews, and then his statements to the police in the beginning, and then their depositions I read as well.
Okay. And you were provided by the defense a list of other items electronically. Did you review any of those?
I believe I made it through all of those.
Okay.
A lot of them were repeats of what I had received from the state attorney's office.
Sure, that's possible. So that included Ronan's early childhood records.
Yes.
It included his school records.
Yes.
And that would also be from Basis Academy, correct?
Yes.
And that would also include those emails between the teacher and the parents?
Yes.
You also reviewed disciplinary records from and other school records from Immaculate Heart?
Yes, I did.
You also reviewed clinical summary in April 22 from Kenny Miller?
Yes.
Okay. And that was on the reactive attachment disorder issue, correct?
Yes.
You also reviewed the records of Dr. Thomas Rickenbacker?
I did.
You reviewed Ronan's other medical records, pediatric medical records?
Yes.
Did you review any of the photographs?
I did.
Okay. Did you review the family counseling associate records?
Yes.
And there were some other records in there, though, that might go beyond the scope of what you testified to. So if they come up, I'll come back to those.
Okay.
You did not actually evaluate Ronan, correct?
I did not.
And you never asked to evaluate Ronan?
I asked if it was possible. Yes, I did.
And what were you told?
Let me have you approach on that.
I can reword it.
Okay, reword it in a way it does involve hearsay.
Sure. Based on the information you received, you then could not evaluate, you believe you could not evaluate Ronan.
True.
All right. And so obviously without actually evaluating Ronan, you can't do anything in terms of diagnosis of him.
Based on the extensive records, my observations of him on the videotapes, teacher observations, et cetera, I believe he has PTSD.
Well, is that your independent diagnosis or based on somebody else's diagnosis?
It's mentioned on occasion in the records, but my independent assessment would be that he does have PTSD, yes.
Well, but as a psychiatrist, is it not correct that you ethically under the rules are not allowed to make a diagnosis of an individual without actually conducting an examination and an evaluation on your own under section 7.32 of the Principles of Medical Ethics for the American Psychiatric Association Ethics Committee?
It's not a hard and fast rule, and in fact, in forensic psychiatry, sometimes we're asked to review records of someone who has passed away from one reason or another, and try to come up and with a diagnostic assessment.
Ronan is not someone who's passed away, though, correct?
Correct.
And when you say it's not a hard and fast rule, it's actually a written rule, though, correct?
Could we go over the language of it?
Sure. In order to arrive at it.
Show him what rule you're referring to. You can approach. What was the last part? Oh, this. Let's show it to the state first, and then you can show it to the witness. Thank you, Mr. Wahid.
Well, it's not like this defense attorney is very likable. Yeah, he's irritated. The Goldwater rule is if you have to make a diagnosis, the person or subject in person. Okay, yeah, so that's what he's doing. Okay. So he's saying, well, you didn't meet and I guess have any appointments with this individual. So you're not allowed to diagnose him at this time. He said, in my opinion, he suffers from PTSD. He goes back to when Barry Goldwater was running for president. JPC says, it's unethical for a psychiatrist to offer a professional opinion unless he or she has conducted an examination and has been granted proper authorization for such a statement. Thank you, JPC. So they're just trying to get him. Are they trying to make him look bad? Or show that, or they're trying to make him look unethical? Hey, Ann Harrington. And you're exactly right. He was hired to provide opinion on the parental treatment of the child, not to diagnose the
All right,
child.
Mr. Wahid, you can continue.
We're going to come back to that question in just a second. Let me talk to you about the pediatric records, which you've reviewed. So let's start with the fact that he was, you've reviewed all these documents, so you know that he was essentially at 7 months old, dropped off at an orphanage in Vietnam.
Overruled. You can answer if you know.
That's what the records show, yes.
Right. And you were talking about, this is in the context of you were talking about how early childhood issues might relate to later development, correct? You were talking about that a couple of times with the state.
Yeah, particularly reactive attachment disorder, yes.
Sure. So we're talking about early childhood. He gets dropped off at 7 months old. We don't know from records, because he was just dropped off at the orphanage, what the prenatal care was, correct? We don't know that.
No, we don't have those records.
We don't know what type of delivery of that baby happened, correct?
Correct.
All right. And we don't really have a medical history for that first 7 months.
That's right.
Okay. Then the child's at the orphanage until about 17 months old, correct?
Yes.
And then he is adopted.
Correct.
By the Ferriters. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. So there's been a lot of conversation about his snacks and eating and that sort of thing. Is it looking at the 2021 medical records, which was literally the most recent prior to the running away that happened here in Florida, he had a 19.7 BMI, which was considered normal. That's normal, correct?
It's, yes. His weight was low, normal, I would say, but in the normal range.
His general appearance presented as well developed, correct?
Yes.
It was noted that he was well nourished and had no acute distress, correct?
And you're reading from the pediatric records?
Yes.
That sounds accurate.
Okay. And I'm picking a particular date of 2021 because I know it changes. I'm not going through all the records, but that was the most recent one, right?
Yes.
Then there was a whole conversation that you had about sugary snacks. Do you remember that?
I don't know if we had a whole conversation about sugary snacks. No.
Well, you definitely talked about snacks with the state, correct?
Yes.
And amongst them was that he was allegedly being deprived of snacks, correct?
What was the first part of your sentence?
among the topics you discussed was that Ronan was allegedly being deprived of snacks, correct?
More so meals, I believe we talked about, that sometimes meals would be held if they thought he was angry, or if they felt he was misbehaving in some other way, they might withhold a meal.
Okay, so we'll get to meals. Well, you also mentioned snacks, so I just want to go in order. So let me ask you, you reviewed the family counseling records, right? And that goes back, that starts essentially September 23rd of 2015. And Ronan is brought by his parents, and the chief complaint is he gets triggered and angry, that he has a low frustration tolerance.
Sustained.
Isn't it true that there were a number of complaints that the parents came to the family counseling services folks with, which included what you were talking about with the RID, which was the hoarding of food, taking food from other kids, that sort of stuff?
Ms. Martin, the counselor, said I believe she was considering RAD.
Right.
As a diagnosis.
Yeah, so this is now
Kathleen Martin was the counselor.
Correct. I don't want to talk over you, so just when you're done, I'll then go. And in that first visit, though, one of the issues that was, or facts that was given to Ms. Martin, was this taking food from kids, hoarding food, that issue.
I believe that's in the records. I don't remember the exact timing.
Okay. I'm happy to refresh your memory. It's right in front of me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can approach Mr. Wade.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And one of the complaints as well, I feel like I need to give you a copy of this because I'm going to do a lot of walking now. One of the complaints as well initially was that Ronan would actively defy or refuse to comply with requests from authority figures, parents, siblings. Parents and siblings are stressed by the yelling and temper tantrums, right?
Yes.
All right. So as a result of a series of meetings with Ms. Martin, one of the diagnoses that she had made was a thing called oppositional defiant disorder.
You can approach. All right, the objection is sustained. Mr. Wahid, you may continue. We've been going about an hour. Is this a good time to take a break, or you want to go for a little bit longer and tell me what a good stopping off point is?
No, don't take a break.
All right, so you tell me when you're at a good break point.
Based on your review of the records, are you aware that that Ronan was also diagnosed at some point with oppositional defiant disorder?
Yes.
And what is that?
It's sort of describes what it is by the title, but it's children who are beyond normal in the sense of defying rules, being oppositional, stubborn, saying things that irritate other people.
And based on what was in the record up until late 2015, would you have agreed with that diagnosis?
I'd really want to know more as to what was going on in his life at that time. And I just don't have the detail to really feel confident on that one way or the other.
Sure. However, would it be enough for you, based on what's in the record, to at least say that that would have been an appropriate differential diagnosis at the time?
Well, there's a lot of reasons kids can be defiant and screaming and going after snacks and sneaking them, that sort of thing, and stealing food from other children at school. So I really want to know more.
All right. So that information, though, based on the record, was passed on to the parents, right? That diagnosis was given to the parents, correct?
I don't know. I assume.
Well, you have it in the records, correct, that you reviewed?
Sustained. If you know, you can answer, sir.
I don't know what Ms. Martin said to the parents about the diagnosis.
Would a document from her report help refresh your recollection?
Well, you asked me if they passed it on to the parents. So
yes,
if that would help me, yes.
Sustained.
Based on your review of the records, was there any advice given as to how to handle that diagnosis?
Sustained. Let me have you approach on that, Mr. Wade.
Why do you have to keep putting this attorney in his place? Why can't he understand what he's allowed to do and not to do? I'm getting frustrated. Quit crossing the line, and why does the judge keep letting him do it? I don't like him. It's just he's arrogant. Well, you know what? He started off on a bad note with me because he talked over his coworker, the other attorney there. He kind of jumped in on her. He should have let her do her thing. And he kind of jumped in like, no, let me handle this. And that put a bad taste in my mouth because I thought that was unethical, unprofessional, not unethical, unprofessional. I think the crazy part is that we're all frustrated about it, is they're all dancing around the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is that they locked this child in a room with no lights half the time. He couldn't get out. He couldn't do anything. He had nothing to do. I would have been drawing on the walls or something. I would have found, like, I'd be hacking into stuff too. But that's what it all boils down to. All this has nothing to do with that. They don't have apparently proof to show where the boy acted out. If they had that, don't y'all think we would have seen that by now?
Objection sustained. You may continue, Mr. Wade.
Because what they've shown is just typical teenage stuff.
If hypothetically a child's diagnosed with ODD, what would you recommend to parents as treatment? A hypothetical.
Sustained. Even a hypothetical still has to be relevant. So unless you want to argue the relevancy at sidebar, you can move on.
I would like to do that.
All right. So let's approach again.
What would be the treatment you would recommend for ODD, oppositional defiance disorder?
In general, learning as much as you can about the ODD symptoms and where they're happening and what's happening, and is it happening everywhere? Is it happening just at home? And then how long has it been occurring? And then once you kind of get a real understanding of it, then it might be approached with individual therapy, or just be meeting with a child, or you might be doing parent training and working with the parents, and or you might also do family sessions where you meet with the child and the parents to work on the oppositional defiant behavior. And sometimes if it's real, I guess, really problematic and you're not getting anywhere with those treatments, you could consider medications.
A medication like is it clonidine? It's a
Clonidine.
clonidine.
Possibly, yes. You could try that.
Okay.
Yes.
And is your understanding that that was ever tried on Ronan?
That was tried for, I believe, ADHD.
But it was tried on him?
Yes. And sometimes children who are depressed will show ODD type symptoms, so you might end up treating them for depression and using an antidepressant.
And would limit setting be one of the things that you would recommend when treating a child with ODD, that parents have limit setting where they put limits on the child?
Yes, that may well be part of it. Yes.
And I'm not sure if you said it, but also would therapy sessions be a part of that?
And generally, yes.
Would you take steps to reduce sugar or other types of caffeinated things that would make one more hyper?
That's very rarely going to explain ODD. I mean, could that be a small part of it? Maybe, but that isn't going to be the source of a child coming in with ODD symptoms.
You said a moment ago that at some point that Dr. Martin, in the review of the records, had also come to a conclusion later on in her work that there's a possibility of reactive attachment disorder. Correct?
It was mentioned, but I read through the records. They're a little bit vague, but yet she had a couple hour-long sessions with Ronan alone, and she described him as compliant, cooperative, normal speech, insightful, judgment intact, adequate impulse control, good memory.
Are you reading from a particular document?
That's from her notes from November 4th of 2015. So he didn't come across at all as having ODD in these. She had two, I believe, 60-minute individual sessions with him. He came across as very sort of really, in a lot of ways, unremarkable as far as having mental illness symptoms of an ODD nature.
But in that same November 4th, 2015, isn't it correct that she also pointed out he was eating too many sugars and sweets, and that the parents had to, and that this was leading to emotionally liable behavior, and that the parents, including screaming, tantrums, and that the parents eventually, she opines that they need to monitor his diet, correct? I'm summarizing without reading the document.
That sounds correct, yes. Okay. But again, eating some sugary sweets isn't going to explain that diagnosis.
We can take a break at this time, Judge.
Okay, all right, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mark, if you could escort them back. Actually, we'll take a 15-minute break. It's 2:45, and we'll be in recess until 3.
No, okay, so yes, I could get earphones. I got the earbuds, and I was on the earbuds yesterday, but the problem is that it's not always
Everyone may
totally,
be seated.
it's not always totally clear.
All right, court will be in recess until 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock. Okay. It's not totally clear, and I think I'm going to put it up on my channel. I've got like a wish list on Amazon. I think I'm going to put that up on my channel. We do have a good chat, don't we? Okay, you guys, let's watch this really quick. So, what was I watching? Dad blasted. I lost my spot.
Doctor, we're going through some of the items that you reviewed that would form your opinion. So Ronan was also diagnosed at some point in the records with ADHD. Can you tell us what that is?
Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder affects about 5% of kids, and they have trouble paying attention, concentrating, completing tasks, sitting still. That's also called hyperactivity, where they have trouble.
And that was he was about 10 years old back then.
Yes, in that neighborhood.
And so well, first, based on your review of the records, would you concur with that opinion?
What doesn't seem to support it is the teacher complaints that occasionally occur aren't about he's not paying attention or he's getting bad grades because he can't concentrate or finish his work. So the teacher reports don't really support ADHD very well. And then when I see him, for instance, on his lengthy CPT interview, He doesn't show any hyperactivity at all, and he's concentrating and he pays attention to everything that's said to him and responds appropriately. So, and then also the video in his box, he doesn't seem hyperactive in there most of the time. So I really felt like that may not be at all a accurate diagnosis.
Well, so this was when he was about 10. You didn't have the CPT interview when he was 10. You didn't have videos when he was 10. So based on the review of records up until he's 10, with the chief complaints about essentially what we just talked about before the break, which, the acting out, temper tantrums, the focus issues that are in the report that we just went through before the break, through all of those things. So just knowing what someone would know in the record up until the point where he's about 10. Based on that, would you concur, if you were to go back in your DeLorean to that time and you were making the diagnosis, would you agree that that could have been a valid diagnosis when he's about 10?
It could have been, but when you look at these notes, for instance, when he's 8, he's described as getting along with children and he responds to discipline. Other notes around that time describe normal mental status examination, normal behavior, going back in the pediatric notes. So that doesn't really fit with ADHD.
What would you opine is a treatment for ADHD?
If the child has ADHD, if it's on the milder side, you can try behavioral interventions and modifying the environment and having them move their desk up to the front of the room so they're less distracted by the kids around them. And then when you get to moderate or severe cases, you generally have to go to medication.
Medication like clonidine.
That's a second level medication. There's sort of the first tier medications are still the stimulant medications like Ritalin.
Okay. What's 10X? TENEX.
That's a medicine like guanfacine. I'm sorry, like clonidine. It's called guanfacine. It's a similar blood pressure medicine, actually, but it was found to work for ADHD as well, to be helpful for it.
And based on your review of the records, you're familiar that Ronan was prescribed these medications?
Yes.
Okay. And is it, do you know that, so Dr. Tom Rickenbacker found that he had ADHD and also the reactive attachment disorder, correct? At the same time.
I have to refresh my memory. I think he was considering reactive attachment disorder also. I thought the wording was that there's RAD issues, but maybe he made the diagnosis.
I can refresh your recollection if you want.
Okay.
My
You
pleasure.
can
Thank
approach.
you.
Yeah, just let's have the protocol that you show it to counsel first before you approach the witness.
Show it first to her.
Yeah. So
Karen, basically, yes. So the defense wants us to believe Ronan was a hopeless case who should be locked up in a box.
It does, yes.
So it's fair to say that back in 2019, Ronan was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder and ADHD.
Yes, I don't believe Dr. Rickenbacker had the entire story at that time. I don't see any mention of, that's 2019, around the time that Ronan would have been starting to be isolated and put in the box, to my understanding. So if he didn't know that, that could be the reason why he's roaming around at night inside the cell and that he's having behavior problems at school.
All right. So you didn't agree with the ODD, oppositional defiance disorder diagnosis. You don't agree with the ADHD diagnosis here. What about the RAD diagnosis?
And again, I'm questioning those diagnoses because I think there's conflicting information, and the people who were assessing him at the time, I don't believe had the full picture.
All right. Now
Good
it's
night,
fair
Patty.
to say though they were closer to opportunity to assess than you are sitting here, correct?
Is
As
it
far as being
Rooster
in
or
the room with
Booster?
him, yes, but they didn't have the benefit of many, many years of observations and records on him. They would not have been provided that or had the time to review all that anyway.
All right. So is that your opinion because you believe that, I just want to be right about this. I think what you just said is that because they don't know that this is generally what you said. They don't know that he, Ronan, I assume, was in the box, the room at the time. And that's an added fact that makes a difference for you, correct?
It does, yes. Again, because maltreatment can look like ADHD. And all these diagnoses say you have to exclude any other potential cause for this before you make, say, a diagnosis of ODD or ADHD.
But earlier when we were talking about Kathleen Martin and her family counseling associate records, those were in 2015. There's no allegation anywhere in the record that Ronan was in that room in the garage in 2015, correct?
Correct.
But he's still acting out and doing all these things and, being disruptive and throwing tantrums and uncontrollable, correct?
It's not like he's always like that. I mean, I didn't see any really big school problems at that time.
So when you
And
say
that's the history that is coming out from I believe, a parent. And then when she's in the room with him, he comes across as a pretty normal kid.
When who's in the room with who?
Ms. Martin is in the room with Ronan for those 2-hour sessions. And the pediatric records around that time aren't real documentary of extreme behavior problems either.
Yet but after she's in the room with him for those sessions, she still opines he has oppositional defiance disorder, though, correct? And he's still not, in a room in the garage at this point.
Did the lawyer say so, or did
I
the
believe
other
that's
guy?
correct, yes.
Okay. But you still don't think you think you're in a better position to now decide he did not have ODD back in 2015. Is that it?
What I tried to explain was I would want more information so that I could feel comfortable ruling in or ruling out that diagnosis. And I just don't know. I really just don't know. I don't have enough information.
So it's fair to say also you don't have enough information to say that Kathleen Martin's diagnosis is incorrect back in 2015.
Or
right?
correct. That's right. Either way.
All right. Would that also apply to the psychiatrist, Dr. Tom Rickenbacher's opinions? You don't have enough information to decide whether it is or isn't accurate? Is that your opinion?
It is, yes.
All right.
Oh, that's exciting, Maddie.
Let's talk about, so as part of the basis of your opinion, you reviewed medical records, but you also reviewed school records, correct?
Yes.
And those were school records from 2 different schools, correct?
Yes.
Independence Middle School and Basis Academy, correct?
Yes.
I believe
Said it. I missed it.
Independence Middle School is earlier in time.
Oh, bruh, I'm with you, Maddie. You might need to do a shot or something before you go. I do not condone alcohol or drugs, but you might want to do a
Let me say
shot.
that again. I believe Basis Academy is earlier in time.
I'd be so nervous.
Right.
All right. And so you reviewed those log entries, right? And
I have, yes.
so it's fair to say that there's a series of incidences where Ronan does something at school. The school basically reaches out to the parents, tells them what he did wrong, and then the parents respond often the exact same day by email.
All right, objection sustained. All right, you can rephrase and move on, Mr. Wahid.
All right. So
Well
before we
said,
start getting into
Nancy.
this, one of the things that you opined earlier was that that Tim Ferriter, his conduct was malicious. Remember that?
I do, yes.
So my understanding is malicious means wrongful, intentional, without legal justification, something where that a reasonable parent would not have engaged in that conduct towards a child for any valid reason, and that the primary purpose of the act was to cause the victim unjustifiable pain and injury. Is that what you meant by malicious?
Overruled. You can answer, sir, if that's what you meant.
That, I wouldn't have probably given that definition verbatim, but that seems to describe it, yes.
Okay.
Mean, cruel, not called for, inappropriate, potentially harmful, or even life-threatening.
And malicious is it in the, let me ask you a question. What is the DSM-5?
The Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and it's the 5th edition. It's been around since, I believe, 1952. It's produced by the American Psychiatric Association, and it attempts to list every mental disorder that can affect human beings. And it's got hundreds of diagnoses in it, and it has descriptions and the criteria you would need to meet each of those diagnoses.
And is malicious a diagnosis in the DSM-5?
No.
No. Okay. So malicious is not a psychiatric diagnosis by you, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Hi, Eleanor.
It's really a lay opinion, correct? Because it's not a psychiatric opinion, which is what you're an expert at, correct?
It's a reflection on personality traits.
But since it's not in the DSM-5, it's fair to say it is not a psychiatric diagnosis, and that is your area of expertise, right?
Well, human behavior would be my area of expertise as well, and personality.
So I don't think you answered my question. So the question is that
He's combative.
malicious not being in the DSM-5 and therefore not being a psychiatric diagnosis, to opine that someone's malicious would not be a psychiatric opinion, correct? It would not require your specialty, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that opinion is you as a layperson. That's your opinion, just as like it would be mine or anyone in the audience.
No, I'm making a clinical assessment of a parent's behavior towards their child. It's a clinical observation based on video evidence, based on other evidence, and based on working with abused children my entire career, as well as abusive parents. And malicious may be an adjective in the DSM. I don't know. We'd have to look in the index. It may be related to certain disorders.
I looked at it. I couldn't find it, but if you find it, please let me know. So,
Sustained. Jury's instructed to disregard counsel's comments about his efforts at finding it in the DSM manual.
Welcome
let's
back,
go back
Barbara.
to now the school records. So your opinion was that the parents' conduct was malicious, that there was, in other words, they, and I'm going to have to use some lay terms here, they didn't care at all about this kid, correct? That's what you're saying?
I never said that.
So I need a better understanding of where do you get malicious from?
He's twisting his words.
To my understanding, it's a synonym for cruel or mean.
Okay. So you think they're cruel or mean?
Their behaviors, yes.
Okay. Towards Ronan?
Yes.
Okay. So there's examples at basics where Ronan gets in trouble and school reaches out to the parents, and the parents respond essentially saying they will now take care of that with some form of either talking to Ronan or some other form of punishment, correct?
I hope talking to him wouldn't be a form of punishment.
Well, some form of
But
punishment.
right, if
or
they're going
talking
to
to him.
respond, yes.
Okay, just so my record's clear on that. I'm not trying to say that they are the same. It's a or. So in other words, I'll say it again, so we're clear for the record, is that school would reach out to the parents and say, Ronan did this in school. And here's the harm it created. And then very, very soon thereafter, usually within the same day, the parents would respond apologizing to the school and saying that they will, in some cases, they said they'll speak to Ronan and they'll have a conversation with him, correct?
I believe so.
And in some cases, they said they will take corrective action with him, correct?
Something like that, yes.
Okay. In your opinion, you've done a lot of work with in the area of juvenile crime, in the area of juveniles. Would that be considered an appropriate parenting technique, their response?
It's not really a parenting technique. They're responding and letting the school know we hear what you said and we're going to deal with it. It really doesn't reflect on the quality or acceptability or appropriateness of the parenting technique. I mean, nowhere did they respond and say, okay, we're going to build a cell and isolate him for 2.5 or 3 years.
He said sell again. Backfired on you, didn't it?
And in your review of the records, some of those instances that happened at Basics actually hurt other children, correct?
He's frustrated.
That's not entirely accurate.
Are you a doctor?
I don't know of any child that was significantly
Attorney?
hurt.
I didn't use the word significantly. I just said hurt other children.
Well, you have to look at each one in context, and there's several of them over the course of, over the course of 4.5 or so years of school records. There was several instances of conflict that got physical, and I think one of the first ones was a boy kicked Ronan in the leg at recess, and then he hit him once back. So it wasn't even Ronan who apparently did the hit first. He got hit, and he was responding defensively.
Sure, mutual combat. Both children got punished, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. There's also a situation though where Ronan took his finger and thumb and pushed it up against a boy's neck, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that would be hurting another child, no?
That boy was, according to the teacher, was not being nice either. So
Is that a reason to do that, doctor? Is that a reason to?
Let him finish his answer, counsel, before you cut him off. Finish your answer, sir.
Yeah, it's not, I don't see Ronan as acting in a vacuum. He just goes up and pushes his thumb into some boy's throat. There was an interaction with them. He took a pocket full of Legos to school, and I believe it was the boy snitched on him and said, hey, he's got Legos. And so the teacher took his Legos away, and Ronan was upset. And then they got into this issue. But the other thing that makes me think of is he recreating the trauma, what he's been through, where he's been grabbed by the neck and pinned up against the wall and choked? Is he reenacting the trauma he's been through?
You also said just now that Ronan's not acting in a vacuum. But it's fair to say that the parents are also not acting here in a vacuum, that they're reacting to Ronan.
Overruled. You can answer it if you know.
Help me. What do you mean reacting to Ronan?
Well, Ronan is acting out and seems to be uncontrollable, and they are trying to do what parents are supposed to do, control their child.
we're getting into which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Did their escalating of abuse of Ronan cause his behavior to get worse and worse, and it just became a vicious cycle? And the worse he was mistreated, the worse he behaved. I mean, that's kind of what it looks like to me, because we don't have a whole lot of behavior problems going on before he was, say, 8, and then it seemed to start around that time.
Well, I
And
don't
they
know where-
had him
where
up
are
until
you
that
getting
point
that?
for 6 from the pediatric records, really, are the main things. And they never took him to any sort of counseling. There's no school records with complaints of Ronan's behavior before age 8.
So it's fair to say that we are how do I word this? Can I come sidebar, Judge?
You can.
Do you see the, Casey, do you see the private chat over here to the right? Y'all are so funny. Yay, he said it. Go, doctor, go. Woohoo. Mic drop. Oh, snap. Oh, my God. Reading all y'all's chats really fast because the doctor's like slapping back at him. There you are. You found it. Okay.
The objection is sustained.
All right. You're on.
Okay.
You don't have records before the age of 8. That's why you're saying that, correct?
So do I just talk now?
That and the pediatric records don't
Well, hang on till
suggest any problems
we
with
get a
his
break.
behavior.
Yeah, okay. Gotcha. So I'm just going to click back a little.
Reaching his
Okay.
milestones on time.
But you weren't provided any of the school records or any other records before that age, correct?
Correct.
So
From school.
Sure.
Any other records from school.
Or any other therapy or other mental health records or anything like that.
Well, I have a mental status exam in essence from when he was 17 months old, when Dr. I think it's Halavy assessed him, I think in Vietnam, and he was described as smiling, laughing, walking, running, and climbing, and his fine motor skills were good.
Well, there you
He
go.
was actually not showing the full effects of being just sort of this non-reactive, non-responding sort of infant that's been completely neglected.
So you have no, other than that, you have no other mental health or therapy or school records before the age of 8.
No.
All right. And that is why you're saying that there weren't any. That's your basis to say why there weren't any incidents before the age of 8.
I didn't see any.
Because you don't have those records, right?
Sustained.
Unanswered.
Sustained. Move on.
So when he goes to Independence, we see a similar pattern, correct? Where
Ms. Coakley, let him finish his question. Restate your question, Mr. White, so I can capture it.
Sure. We see a similar pattern that we saw at Basics, where there's an incident that happens with Ronan in school. School reaches out to the parent, and the parent says that they will they'll talk to him, they'll do something about it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And there's a point in time where that's like almost every month, right? In 2019.
Approach.
Here we go again. Here we go again. When he was adopted, I know Patty had it was 17 months, wasn't it? 17 months. So less than a year and a half old. Young enough for them to make an impression upon this child, to love this child, to, I feel, bring him back from whatever experience he had before then. I think they could have reversed whatever negative thing there was there. But the doctor just said it. He wasn't showing any signs of negativity when he came out of there.
So I'm going to talk through the year of 2019. It's 2 schools. So he was at Immaculate Heart, and then he is at for the first part of the year and then a basis the next part of the year. So looking at 2019. Just in February, March, April, just in those months, there seems to be an incident. There's at least 5 incidents, correct? A very short span of time.
In which month?
Late February of 2019 through early April of 2019.
I tried to list them out. I may have missed some, but I have 12 of them over a period of 4.5 years, 12 teacher communications with the parents about Ronan, the behaviors.
All right. So
that's probably out of 800 school days. I've got roughly 12 complaints.
So the question though is, in a very short span of time, from February 28th to April 5th, there are 6 incidents where the school has to reach out to the parents in a manner we just talked about, where they are complaining about his acting out, his behavior, injuring other children during recess, or taking electrical items, calculators, whatever from other kids. And the parents respond to each one of those within a day, saying that they will take some corrective action.
And what period are you saying that starts in? What month and year?
February 28th, 2019.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So this February 28th, 2019. I have March 8th, 2019, March 16th, March 22, March 27th, April 5th. Correct?
I don't have all those. I'm not sure if they're related or not. I have the the February 28th, 2019 one marked down, where he got into an altercation with another boy and they were both throwing punches.
So the question I have, first, I can't ask the question until I know, are you agreeing or disagreeing with the foundation of what I'm saying?
I didn't document all those, so if you want to show them to me, if there's 6 of them there or 5 of them, I don't have those documented, but if they're all about the same incident, that's why I would not have documented all 5 instances, if it's just more about the same incident.
The different incidences. Each is a different incident. I understand your question. So I can show you. Hang on.
All he's doing is turning this attorney is turning the jury against his client.
All right, you may approach.
All right. So the question I was asking earlier is, and I had said 5 or 6. I now count, and I've tried to help refresh recollection about 8 incidents from January 29th, 2019 through April 5th of 2019, where the school reached out to the parents with incidents that had taken place with
All
Ronan.
right, so the question is, has his recollection been refreshed? That's the first question we have to get to before we talk about what his refreshed recollection is.
I'm just giving context.
Yeah, but my concern is in the method of questioning. Let's find out if his recollection's been refreshed first.
Has your recollection been refreshed, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So there were incidences on January 29th of 19, February 15th of 19, February 28th of 19, March 8th of 19, March 16th of 19, March 22nd of 19, March 27th of 19, April 5th of 19 at the school, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And at each time, in each of those incidents, it ranged from some injury to another student to some property damage or theft, correct?
No. One of them is he had, I believe, green sprinkles in his possession. Another one was he took some snacks from another student. Another one was he was found in possession of a Texas Instruments calculator. Another one was he did something to a computer regarding the coding or something. He was trying to get to a game on that computer. And then the one we talked about already, we had a fight with a boy on the playground. I mean, they threw some punches. And then, let's see, another one was he kicked a ball at another student multiple times. And then, so
How was that?
I didn't
not
see
what
where anybody was injured or hurt. I mean, and many of these are regarding items he had in his possession or messing with the computer or having sprinkles.
Sprinkles, which he had stolen, right? Those were not his sprinkles.
Oh my gosh,
Right.
really? He
I'm
stole
not sure where he got
sprinkles,
the
so we're gonna put him in a box.
I'm going by the documents you reviewed. And when you're saying not injured, isn't there literally on the February 28th, 2019, where the note says this is an ongoing pattern of Ronan injuring children at recess. Correct?
If it says that, yes.
You can look at it. It's in front of you.
Oh, these two just, oh, it's so awkward.
And you said one of the examples when I said theft, you said, well, he was just found with a Texas Instruments calculator. That was a stolen calculator, correct? The parents are the
It was
ones.
not his. That's correct.
The parents found it and contacted the school to say he's got this calculator. It's not his.
Right. I believe that's right.
And the school said, oh, we've been looking for that. It's another student.
Sustained.
So you'd agree that this, of the incidents, we have injuring other children, we have theft, correct? We have those two so far.
Yes.
All right. And it's appropriate for parents to react to that in a way to try and curb that type of behavior of their child, correct?
It depends. It depends.
Depends on how they react. But yes, they should deal with it appropriately. Yes.
So,
But locking the child in a box is illegal.
and we went through the medical records already, but at this time, he's already been seeing a therapist. He has also seen a psychiatrist, Dr. Rickenbacker, at this point already, and this conduct continues to happen, correct?
Well, you're bringing up a lot of things from 2019, and that's around the time he was put in the box. So how much of this is acting out from being put in the box? It would be my first question.
Oh,
Because you do document a blip up, a increase in his behavior issues at school.
Well, I went through I went through all of the records before that as well, and we can keep going through records in 2018. I can do those
good night,
too.
Tina.
And you have them. And if you want, we can go through 2018.
Sustained.
Well, is it your position that this acting out that I just went through in 2019 did not occur in 2018?
We talked about some of the things that happened before, like the boy kicked him on the field, and then he punched the boy, and then the Legos incident.
And the finger and thumb incident?
Yes.
Okay. So there were things in 2018 as well.
Yes.
Going from February of 2018 all the way to December of 2018.
I have October of 18, but maybe there was one in December that I didn't document.
So on direct, you had talked a bit about the him being in essentially solitary confinement, correct?
Yes.
So it's your position that he was in that room 14 to 16 hours on a daily basis. Yes?
It's not my position. It's what the records reflect.
Which records?
All of them put together, CPT records, police interviews, collateral interviews. For instance, what Fiona
Richie.
said.
You testified on direct, you reviewed 40 videos, ring videos, correct?
About that, yes.
And that's out of approximately 21,000 ring videos, correct?
I don't know how many there were. I know there was a whole lot of many videos.
So the 40 that the state selected to give you are the ones you reviewed?
Correct.
And it is your opinion from the review of those 40 videos, is that where you get your 14 to 16 hours on a daily basis that he's in his room? We're talking about January, right? January 22.
Yes.
Okay. That's where you get that information? From the ring videos? I just don't know the basis.
No, I didn't get it from the ring videos, no. But the ring videos corroborate that history, that he would be woken up in the morning. He'd be asked, is it dirty? Referring to the plastic bucket. Then I believe he was allowed to go on to the bathroom. Then he'd go back in the box, and then the mother would take the children to school, and then she would come back and get him around 9. And then he would go back in the box after school, say, I don't know, 4:30, whatever the math would be.
Are you aware that
4:30 p.m., of course.
So I'm trying to understand the basis of where you're getting that number. That's all. So I said, is it from the 40 videos? You said it's not just from that, it's from the record. So what are you talking about? Where do you get that from? You said the CPT, that was one thing you said. So who in the CPT said that? CPT record.
Now I want a Twinkie.
Ronan.
Okay. Ronan said he was in there 14 to 16 hours per day.
What I had was a ballpark of when he left the house, when he was let out of the box, and then when he got home from after school, when he was put in the box. And then he was kept in the box, to my understanding, almost every night, fed in the box after everybody else had ate. And then he stayed in the box throughout the night until he was let out in the morning. So if you add up the hours, it's probably, I don't know, even if you went 5 o'clock to midnight, that's 7. Then midnight to 8 is 8. So that's 15 hours.
There you go.
I'm just ballparking it. I don't have an exact number of hours.
If I were to tell you that
Look at her smiling at
if
him.
the evidence were to show that it is no more than 10 hours a night, and at most, on occasion, a 3-hour block during a day, would that change your opinion in any way as to whether or not, and I'm not sure what your opinion was here, whether or not it was malicious?
Any amount of solitary confinement for hours to me is unacceptable. There's no justification for it, and it's cruel.
Okay.
There you go.
So it wouldn't change your opinion?
No.
So the lessening of hours wouldn't change your opinion?
Mark.
No.
Okay.
You're so
And
bad.
so if I were to tell you that
Let him finish the question before you make your objection. Go ahead, Ms. Wright.
Sure. If I were to tell you that, hypothetically, that that he was out with family on various occasions, he participated in community events or any of those types of things, would that change your opinion in any way?
I'm aware of those episodes of being out and about. So no, I've already taken those into consideration.
If if I were to tell you that he was provided a breakfast every morning from his mother, would that change your opinion in any
He
way?
knows that.
I'm aware of that already, except there were some mornings he didn't get breakfast, and it's on the Ring video as well. Him being handed say a banana with some peanut butter on bread.
And the banana with peanut butter on bread is not breakfast in your opinion?
I didn't say that. No.
Okay. So you said he was not given breakfast. He was handed a banana with peanut butter on bread. That's what you just said.
No, I said some days he did not get breakfast.
Okay. And then other days he got, as you said, a banana with peanut butter on bread.
My understanding, most days he was given breakfast.
So on direct, by the way, you had said that you spoke to the issue of the banana with peanut butter on bread in the context of torture. Is it your opinion that it's torturous to get a banana with peanut butter on bread for breakfast?
No.
Okay, because I'm a big fan of banana and peanut butter mix. So
I am too.
Okay. And
We don't care.
is it your opinion, or would it change your opinion if you saw videos of Ronan eating dinner outside his room during that January of 22 time period?
He said that on 3 instances, he did have dinner with the family outside of the cell in January.
He said sell again. I love
So
it.
about one out of every, whatever it would be, 10 days, he ate with the family dinner.
And would it change your opinion if going to the breakfast that he had breakfast outside his room out in the kitchen?
I do too, Nancy.
I don't recall seeing information on how often he was out for breakfast. My impression was from reading all the materials that he didn't go out for breakfast, or very rarely.
Would it change your opinion if there were videos with him sitting on the couch watching TV with his dad?
My opinion about the okayness of solitary confinement? No, but I know that at times he was out of his cell and spent some time in the house with the family.
So it's fair to say your opinion. So give me your opinion again, in like sum it up, because I'm a little vague on it. What is the opinion you are trying to, as an expert psychiatrist, convey to this jury?
What I've given multiple opinions. What opinion would you like to know that I can repeat?
Something that a psychiatrist would opine on.
Hey, Kay Phillips.
That the parents' treatment of Ronan was psychologically abusive. It was physical abusive. It was neglectful. It put him at a serious risk of harm and health issues, or even worse. It was cruel. It was malicious. It was dehumanizing. It was degrading. It was very damaging to his identity, his self-esteem, his whole adjustment to life, being put in this kind of a solitary confinement situation.
And knowing what RAD is, and that there are, as we discussed already earlier, that we don't know what Ronan's first 17 months was like before he was adopted. Are you taking the opinion that he does or does not suffer from reactive attachment disorder?
I would concur that he had signs of reactive attachment disorder when he was younger. In fact, one of the pieces of that was early on when he was an early toddler. His mother said that he was just really resistant to being cuddled, which is sort of a classic sign of reactive attachment disorder.
And that would be something in line with what would have happened to him in the first 17 months of his life, correct? That would have been that's a very likely cause for that reactive attachment disorder.
Knowing all we do, yes, that would line up.
Okay. And is it your opinion that that Tim Ferriter caused the reactive attachment disorder?
No.
Okay.
Did his behavior exacerbate it and bring signs of it back? I would say yes. But
Okay.
he didn't cause it. It was caused by his first 17 or so months in Vietnam.
You also know, though, from review of all the records we've already talked about here today, that he was given medical advice and he followed that advice, right?
Sustained.
Are you aware if Mr. Ferriter was provided any medical advice to deal with the reactive attachment disorder?
What I'm aware of is that Ronan was taken to several counselors when he was younger, and what kind of struck me was he didn't stay with any counselor more than really a few sessions, and then he wouldn't go anymore, and then later he would go to another counselor and see them maybe once or twice or three times, and then it would stop. So I question why there was not consistency and follow through with the first or the second or the third counselor to try to treat his problems. I don't know the answer to that.
And if I were to tell you hypothetically that Tim Ferriter was provided medical guidance from all the records we've looked at, and that he attempted to follow that as best he and his family could under the circumstances, would that change your opinion in any way?
Approach.
Okay. So for those of you who are not aware, Mom's trial has not been scheduled yet. I think that Mom's trial her defense is going to work based on what they find out here, right? Of course, any good attorney does that, right? But a lot of you guys are saying in the chat earlier that they think that she'll take a plea based upon how this is not going to end well for them. And if they have not figured that out yet.
All right, the objection is sustained. You need to rephrase, Mr. Waheed.
So, doctor, if Mr. Ferriter was provided medical advice and relied upon it, would that change your opinion?
About his treatment of Ronan in the solitary confinement or the physical abuse? I mean, no, I don't see how it would. I don't think any professional gave him advice to put your child in solitary confinement or physically abuse the child or withhold meals for punishment or take his one book away as punishment or turn the lights out. No, I don't. It wouldn't.
In terms of if any of the behavior of Tim Ferriter, what do you believe it was in response to Ronan? Because we had a conversation earlier about chicken and egg, or you did. So your position is that Mr. Ferriter's the chicken and Ronan's the egg. Based on that question I just asked you, which is if hypothetically Mr. Ferriter was provided medical advice and relied upon it in his journey with Ronan, would that change your opinion as to who's the chicken and who's the egg in this scenario?
The easy answer is no. I don't know how it would.
I'm confused.
But as I said earlier, Mr. Ferriter didn't cause the original reactive attachment disorder problem.
Exactly, Zeph.
Correct. So did Mr. Ferriter, so the short answer you just gave is no, it wouldn't change your opinion, correct?
Correct.
If he'd have stopped questioning earlier on, he'd have been better off than he is right now. He's just hurt his whole case with continuing to question this doctor.
On direct, you talked about the juvenile detention center. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And you were talking about what the confinement looks like, correct?
Yes.
And you were talking about how it isn't pitch black in there.
Right.
All right. But there is a thing called lights out at a juvenile detention center, correct?
Yes, but there's enough lighting where officers can do their rounds and look in and see all the kids. So it's not pitch black, but the lights are dimmed down, so it's
Yep.
easier for the kids to sleep.
You wrote an article that I reviewed where you talked about the type of violence that happens at juvenile detention centers, correct?
You mean towards the kids?
Yes, towards the kids or from the kids to each other.
And object as to relevance.
Sustained. Unless you want to approach Mr. Wahid.
No.
Yes. Juvenile violence and homicide in particular, yes.
He did have books, Nancy.
And you're familiar with the term school to prison pipeline, correct?
Sustained.
As far as you know, based on all the records you reviewed, Mr. Ferriter never called the police on his child, did he?
Object as to relevance.
Sustained.
No, because they would have found the box if he called the police. Mama called the police because he went missing one time. I don't think Tim's happy with this guy. We don't really care what Tim thinks, but I want to see Tim get heated. It's very law and order. You know what I mean? Like if they were to get Tim on the stand and make him break, we know that's not going to happen, but he's run away multiple times. Yeah. And there was on the police report, well, the mother had reported him as a runaway. I guess that's how all this started.
The objection is sustained. Next question.
Doctor, now, a couple hours ago, I asked you about the ability to opine on a diagnosis without having evaluated a patient or an individual. And you'd asked me to show you the section. May I approach, Judge?
You can approach Ms. Coakley first.
This is called the Goldwater rule. Had to do with Barry Goldwater when he was running for president, and there was a poll about whether he was fit to be president or not. That's where this came from. And I've been in committees trying to rewrite this because I was on the ethics committee for 18 years. So I'm very familiar with this. And that doesn't exclude us if we're asked for a professional opinion.
What is the rule?
Unless you've been granted proper authorization for such a statement. So being an expert witness for the court would be proper authorization to offer my professional opinions.
If you could just read the whole thing for the jury, just because they don't know what you're looking at.
Okay. On occasion, psychiatrists are asked for an opinion about an individual who is in the light of public attention and who has disclosed information about himself, herself through the media. That is, that person in the light of attention. In such circumstances, a psychiatrist may share with the public his or her expertise about psychiatric issues in general. However, it is unethical for a psychiatrist to offer a professional opinion unless he or she has conducted an examination and has been granted proper authorization for such a statement. And it should say there, from that person in light of public attention. So this is really about talking heads getting on TV and talking about somebody and making a psychiatric diagnosis, say some serial killer or some other, typically those sorts of crimes, or the psychiatrist will make opinions without having done an examination.
There's no
without having anything to go on other than what they've learned about from, say, the media. So it's trying to stop that sort of attention-seeking behavior by people who like to get attention being on one of these talking head shows, to put it bluntly.
There's no exception in the rule, though, written, correct?
Unless you're granted appropriate legal authorization or whatever it is. Yes.
Thank you. No other questions.
All right, Ms. Coker.
8:30. They're going to start 8:30 in the morning. They're not done today, but they're going to start. All right, let me go back over here. Finally, they shut the mic off. Okay. Let's hear what this woman has. She shares her struggles of raising an adopted child with reactive attachment disorder. And y'all just pray I don't get zapped for playing this on my channel. Maybe I should leave it out like that so it's there.
Yourself and tell us a little bit about your story.
My name is Julie. We have 3 biological children and chose to adopt an older child through county services about 10 years ago. And it's been quite a journey. When we adopted her, we were very financially stable. We enjoyed our kids. We were showing our kids the world, and we thought it would be nice to share that with somebody, that might not otherwise have an opportunity to do that. And when we adopted her, we were told that, she was going to be a handful, that we would, but that once she was comfortable and settled in our home and felt safe, that she would settle down and settle into the program. And they told us about a year. When a year came and went, things were not settling down at all. As a matter of fact, they were escalating on a 6 or 7 year old level. And then they told us, well, give her another year and things will be fine. So all along we felt that we weren't doing the right thing by her, because we were never seeing, we would see brief reprieves, I guess, in her behavior, but as she got older, her needs or wishes or wants and demands became way more involved. To complicate the situation, we lost our youngest biological daughter very unexpectedly about 5 years ago, which didn't leave us with a whole lot of strength for dealing with some of the behaviors that we deal with our daughter. And so things were kind of put on hold, probably at a critical time for our daughter. And it's just, things have escalated. Behaviors are getting more exhausting, more exaggerated. And we've just been trying to get help. One thing I forgot to mention earlier is that, and I think this is important, that Naomi was given up by her mother at 3 years old voluntarily. And she was in the system for about 3 years, and we were her 9th placement in 3 years. And prior to that, her 7th placement was another adoptive home, and that was a failed adoption. And as a result, the county has been wonderful about throwing services at us. And we have family counseling. We were doing it 3 days a week, and that really helped me settle down and understand a little bit more about why things happen the way that they do. Took the personal piece out of it for me a little bit. And we have her in individual counseling. She's doing some neurofeedback. She's just had one at this point, one session of that. They are throwing a lot of services. I believe they're trying, but the service that we feel is going to be most beneficial for her, as severe as she is. They don't have don't have the funds, or they are not willing to put her in the program here at the Institute.
What is it like for you knowing that you can't provide the type of care that's been recommended for your child as a mom?
It's frustrating. I mean, it's beyond frustrating. Certainly when she's 18 years old, we can wash our hands. It's not what we want to do with her. We want to help her. We want her to be successful. She's beautiful, she's bright, and she has so much potential. It's terribly frustrating.
How about, I just want to talk to your mom's heart for a minute. What is that
cry.
like for you as a mom?
It's awful. It's been awful. I'm a fixer. I'm the type that, wants to make things right. And it's been incredibly frustrating trying to get the attention of what we need and get her the help. Up until just recently, we thought we were losing our marbles. It's been a challenge with our marriage. We've been married for 35 years, and right now we just kind of are, I feel like we're coexisting. Part of it has to do with the adoption and the issues there. The other part has to do with the loss of our daughter. Our older kids are both married. One has a family. My 29-year-old son said to me recently that he just wanted his mom and dad back. It's, they support us. They don't have much of a relationship with our daughter. They've certainly seen the toll that it's taken on us.
All right, Ms. Coakley, you may go ahead and begin.
Oh,
So just to go back to that
recross-examinate,
Goldwater
redirect.
doctrine, are you allowed to opine on whether or not the president of the United States has a psychological condition based on their interviews on television?
No.
Are
It's
you
considered unethical to do that?
would you be allowed to just watch the TV coverage of this case and come in and do an opinion?
No.
Is it permissible to, as part of a court proceeding, review all the records involved and opine in certain circumstances?
Yes.
Now, there was a lot of questioning on cross-examination about whether or not Tim Ferriter acting on the advice of medical personnel would change your opinion. Was there any indication in the records you reviewed that the defendant in this case was advised to treat his son how he did?
No, there was not.
Was there any indication from any of the people involved that it was appropriate to confine his child for multiple hours a day?
No.
Was there any indication that any medical professional ever told him that he should keep his child in a room in the dark for hours during the day?
No.
Was there any indication that any medical professional said that the child should be deprived of access to a bathroom?
No.
Would that be a medically acceptable treatment for any condition?
No. I
Now-
can't think of one.
What, you can't think of one?
I can't.
Now, I want to talk for a second about some of the specifics that you testified to. There was a little bit of a talk about the oppositional defiant disorder diagnosis by Miss Martin. Was she a doctor or a clinical licensed social worker?
She's a social worker.
So that wasn't a diagnosis that was done by a doctor.
Correct.
In addition, that was in the year, what year thereabouts was that?
That should have been 2015 when he was, let's see, 8.
2015, or would it be 6?
It was 2015.
Leading, is that the sustained rephrase?
Well, about how old would he have been?
He was 8.
And in general, did you see or were you able to tell how often he was, there was any kind of intervention for that, or how often he met that licensed clinical social worker?
Sorry.
Okay.
I was looking.
Was it more than a
Okay,
handful of times?
I'm wrong. It was, yes. Okay. I'm with you. We're talking about Kathleen Martin.
Right.
Yes. And that was, I have in my records, September to November of 2015, when he would have been 8 in 2nd grade.
So a 3-month period?
If that, I could only find 3 sessions, the intake and then a couple of those, a couple others.
And in reviewing of the records that were made available to you, is she the only practitioner that found that oppositional defiant disorder?
Susan Martin in the same year, a counselor also who saw him, very limited notes from her as well, but she had ODD as a diagnosis or possibility.
And would that not reflect later on? Was that reflected in the findings of the other people he saw, like in 2018 and 2019? Which would be like Dr. Reinbacher?
Yeah, he focused more on the ADHD. I believe ODD may have surfaced. I'm not positive.
Now, or was he, take a look, was he just reactive attachment disorder and ADHD?
Yes.
Now, is there a treatment for oppositional defiant disorder if it in fact is accurate?
Yes.
Does it involve locking a child in a room?
No.
Does it involve isolation or confinement of a child?
No.
Would it be just therapy and medicine?
Yes.
Now, is there any indication that that was pursued for Ronan beyond those 3 appointments that you told us about?
No, and that's what I could never sort of find a reason in these couple therapists he went to as to why it just stopped after 1 or 2 or 3 sessions. There was no sort of explanation. It just stopped.
There we go.
Now, we also
There we
discussed
go.
with defense that there was diagnoses at some point in his history for ADHD. Is ever it's confining a child a treatment for that?
No.
Now, we talked about what Dr. Reichenbacher found between 2000 and the end of 2018 and the beginning of 2019 about how old was Ronan at that point.
He would have been 11 at that time.
And even then, with the reactive attachment disorder and the ADHD, is it a treatment for a reactive attachment disorder to confine a child for long periods of time?
No.
And in Dr. Reinbacher's records, is there a reflection or a consideration about whether or not Ronan is experiencing aggression?
You're saying, does it address that?
Yeah, does it address whether or not that is a symptom that is he is struggling with?
Well, January, it says, of 2019, it says he's doing better with not getting angry, and he's been apologizing. And then in May, it says he's not having severe aggression and that he's having adequate behavior at school. And that's in May of 2019.
And is that, based on the records that you reviewed, the last professional intervention with a psychiatrist, psychologist, or a clinical social worker in 2019?
Yes, that's it.
In total, about how many times did he even see Dr. Reichenbach?
A handful of times, 4 or 5, maybe 6, something like that.
Now, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. You said 4, 5, or 6 times?
4 or 5, maybe 6.
Now, you mentioned that you had some disagreements about, or maybe some questions about the diagnoses that Dr. Reichenbacher came to. Is it important for a psychiatrist when making a differential diagnosis to know something like the conditions in which the child is living?
It's extremely important. Yes. I mean, is the child being abused? Is the child being neglected? Is the child in solitary confinement? And around the end of the time that Dr. Reichenbacher was seeing him, that was occurring. And there's nowhere in the notes he had any idea of that.
Would that be important information that would influence an expert making an opinion about the cause of some type of behavior by a child?
No, absolutely. That would be a huge influence on your assessment of why the child's having problems at school.
I want to talk for a second about some of the school misbehaviors that the defense went into. We talked about behaviors that started occurring in a cluster in February of 2019. Does that coincide with when he starts to be confined in a room in a garage in Arizona?
Yes, it does.
And can that type of treatment impact his behavior?
I believe it would have had a huge impact on his behavior. Yes.
Now, when we talk about like the correspondence for these types of behavioral problems, are you also seeing very minor infractions committed behaviorally?
Yes.
Things like bad language?
Yes.
Stealing a piece of candy?
Yes.
Now, are those, even with the acts of a mutual combat with another child, getting into a fight with another child, are those the level of behavioral issues that you would expect with a child that has a severe conduct or attachment disorder?
He doesn't have a conduct disorder per se. I mean, that's a diagnosis. I would say he has conduct disorder.
Okay.
I don't think you mean that.
What do you think I mean? What I mean? Tell
You
me.
mean a behavioral?
Yes,
a behavioral-
it's someone who has a behavioral problem that is clinically severe. Would you expect to see a higher level of behavioral problems in their life?
Well, yeah, you would. Even with a child with reactive attachment disorder, they're going to, or symptoms of it, they're going to have some delay and maybe not, they're not going to be so great at their psychosocial skills, their social skills, so they can get into, more likely to get into conflicts or be teased by other kids.
As far as like the level of adverse behaviors that Ronan is experienced is indicating, would you consider these to be severe behaviors that based on the records from the school?
No, not at all. But one of the most telling things is he never even got suspended. So often in my own practice, for instance, I'll see kids that age, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15. If they get into a fight, they get suspended. It's sort of like the intent of the child and how severe is it. And so he's never once been suspended, which really tells you that nothing really rose to a particularly severe level of aggression.
That fist fight that we read that email about, did both children get punished?
They did, yes.
Now, did you see in the review of the records, was there any indication that at any point Ronan had an IEP or any kind of individual educational plan to address behavioral issues at the school?
No, I didn't see that. No.
Was there an indication that the school was told that he didn't have behavioral issues in some cases?
That he did or didn't?
Did not.
Yes, there were.
Tell us about that.
Well, there's some notes from the school that say that in general Ronan's been doing fine this year and there hasn't been any problems. And then the other thing is when I mentioned how many days of school he's been in the 5 years up to being put in the box, we're really talking about hundreds and hundreds of days at school, and yet we only have these isolated handful of events, whatever it is, 10 or 15, based on the email. So really you're talking about a boy who's getting in trouble not very frequently at all when you look at the 180 school days a year.
Now, when we're talking about the communication that the defendants had with the child's school indicating that they were notified of the punishment and they were going to address it, is there any indication that the defendants notified the school that the way that they were going to address it was to confine the child in a room in their garage?
No.
Did they ever inform the school of the living situation of which they were subjecting the child to?
No.
Now, you also talked briefly about a report by another licensed clinical social worker, Kenny Miller. In reviewing his report, was there a bias in his report that you perceived?
Okay, point made, Miss Cher. I'm gonna put that up there on the screen. It is amazing how strong Ronan was to be put through this and to do so well in school and attend. That's what I was thinking. Like, if he was so, I thought, now I could be wrong, but I thought kids that go through stuff like this, they don't do well in school. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll admit if I'm wrong. I'm not afraid of that. I don't know. He was sharp as a tack and needed far more educational challenges. Okay, that's a good point, Nancy. That's a very good point. This kid didn't have enough.
Objection sustained. Rephrase the question, Ms. Coakley.
The report of the social worker, Kenny Miller, did you take into consideration the timing of when it was issued?
Yes, I did.
When was it issued?
After the Ferriters were arrested.
And was it based in large part on their representations to Mr. Miller?
It was, yes.
And so did that have an impact on how much you weighed his conclusions?
It did, yes, because I didn't see that he had any exposure or access to all the other information in this case that would have, I think, improved his ability to understand what exactly was going on with Ronan and the parenting.
Now, lastly, the defense asked you about your ability as a psychiatrist to opine that something is malicious. Is it in your realm of expertise to make a clinical assessment of parents' behaviors, especially in the cases of abuse?
Oh, yes. I mean, commonly.
Is that something that psychiatrists, medical doctors like yourself, especially forensic psychiatrists, commonly do?
Yes.
And based on all your training and experience and also the active literature, are you able to, as a psychiatrist, to opine that this conduct was malicious and harmful?
Yes, and those physical abuse or psychological abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, those are actually diagnostic categories in the DSM.
That
we need to put those in the record when we believe that they're occurring, so we have an accurate representation in the medical record of what we have opined about the patient.
You believe that was occurring here?
I believe what?
Do you believe that was occurring here, abuse and neglect?
Yes.
That's all the questions I have.
All right. All right, Ms. Coakley, you may begin.
Fresh witness.
Detective Lowe, can you just introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, I'm Christopher Lowe, agent with the Jupiter Police Department, and my role there is a digital forensic agent.
We met you yesterday and talked to you a lot. Did you make a further further exhibits for the court as it relates to some of the ring video?
I did.
Yesterday, we entered in a few videos related to the rocks and the shells. Did you expand that time period to include those videos that are already admitted, but also the surrounding time frame of that?
Yes.
That is what contains on these USB drives?
Correct.
Are they a true and accurate depiction of the videos that you retrieved from Ring as a result of the lawful search warrant in this case?
They are.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move them in as...
Your next number is 20 and 21. You've got two. Is it 20 and 21?
Yes.
Any objection? All right, court receives and accepts States Exhibit 20 and 21 in evidence without objection.
That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
All right, any cross? All right, sir, that concludes your testimony. You may step down. Thank you for being here again. All right, good. I'll see everybody tomorrow for an 8:30 sharp start time. Thank you.
Guys ever been a part of a group that liked to meet to talk about what the next meeting was going to be about? I kind of feel like we're part of this group with these people in this courtroom that they want to meet to talk about what the next meeting is going to be. You know what I mean? Like, let's send an email to talk about what the upcoming email is going to be. Are you guys feeling me? Are you where I'm at with this? I'm getting that feeling. See you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for keeping us all sane here together. We will get through this trial together without hurting anyone. Have a blessed evening. I'll see you guys early in the morning. 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern.